Chapter 792. Su Yan followed Bai Wuji into the fluttering snow city. Looking at Bai Wuji's figure in front of him, Su Yan couldn't help but reveal a strange expression. Honestly speaking, when he first learned that Chu Xiu was actually in the fluttering snow city, and that the fluttering snow city had even sided with Chu Xiu, Su Yan was really surprised. It wasn't that the Great Brilliance Temple was slow in their news, but to the Great Brilliance Temple, the grudges and killings in the northern Yan land were really too boring. It was so boring that the Great Brilliance Temple didn't even want to participate in it. Their eyes were only focused on the situation of the entire Jianghu. Therefore, after the incident at the drifting snow city in the extreme north, the disciples of the Great Brilliance Temple did not even report it. After knowing that Chu Xiu was at the drifting snow city in the extreme north, Su Yan finally understood what had happened during this period of time. After knowing everything that happened in the fluttering snow city, Su Yan also felt a little sad. A major sect that was so close to the Great Brilliance Temple was gone just like that. Although in the eyes of others, the fluttering snow city had weakened, it still existed. But in Su Yan's eyes, from the moment the fluttering snow city sided with that demon, Chu Xiu, they had already abandoned themselves and were no longer the fluttering snow city of the past. Thinking of this, Su Yan couldn't help but sigh. Little friend Bai, in the past, you and my sect's Zong Xian were both elites on the Longhu leaderboard. Although your fluttering snow city doesn't abhor evil, but all these years, you have stood on the side of the righteous path. But now, you've sided with Chu Xiu, becoming an accomplice of the demonic path. Why do you have to do this? Bai Wuji didn't even turn his head. He only said calmly, when did my fluttering snow city not want to become a righteous sect and live in glory? But when my fluttering snow city was in danger, who cared about my fluttering snow city? It's not that we didn't beg the Great Brilliance Temple, but in the end, we couldn't even enter the door. Of course, this is also what my fluttering snow city deserves. The sins of the previous generation will be repaid by the current generation. But since Buddha isn't willing to help me, why are you complaining that I've joined the demonic path? Su Yan sighed and did not say anything else. This matter could only be said to be a joke of fate. It was not that the Temple of Great Light did not want to help, but that they could not. The disciples were not in the wrong. The Temple of Great Light would not care about such matters. To put it bluntly, what happened in the northern fluttering snow city was a conflict between the forces of the martial arts world. If the Great Light Temple were to intervene in this kind of matter, there would be people begging them for help in the future. At that time, would the Great Light Temple intervene? Hence, such matters couldn't be said out loud and could only turn a blind eye to it. But in the end, the Drift Snow City was pushed towards Chu Xiu's side. When the demonic path did things, they did not seek fame, but only profit. Chu Xiu brought Su Yan into the Great Hall. Chu Xiu directly sat on the seat that belonged to the Drift Snow City Lord of the Northern Drift Snow City as he smiled. Grandmaster Su Yan came from afar. I apologize for not going out to welcome you. I hope Grandmaster won't take offense. Although Chu Xiu said not to take offense, he had no intention of standing up at this moment. Su Yan stared at Chu Xiu and did not get angry. After a while, he said in a deep voice, Chu Xiu, what do you mean by this? Other than infuriating my Temple of Great Light by playing those little tricks of yours, it doesn't bring you any benefits. The great battle between the righteous and demonic factions has just ended. Although your hidden devil lineage didn't suffer too much damage, you can't really think that my righteous path of martial arts world doesn't have the strength to fight anymore, right? Chu Xiu shook his head and said, Grandmaster Su Yan, if I say that I was forced to do this, would you believe me? Su Yan was so angry that he laughed instead. I sent people to ask the sect masters and clan heads of those small factions, and they said that they were forced to do so. Now that I've found you here, you also say that you were forced to do so, and that all of you are innocent people. Yet, this matter has become my Temple of Great Light's fault? Chu Xiu stared at Su Yan and said plainly, in Jianghu, one has no choice. There are too many things in this world that cannot be helped. Those sects and families are not as strong as my Jianghu Hall, so I can force them. I am now attached to the Northern Yan Imperial Court. Although my words carry enormous weight in Jianghu Hall, I still have to listen to the Imperial Court. So, Xianglong forced me, and I could only act. Su Yan frowned and said, "This is Xianglong's order." Chu Xiu nodded and directly sold Xianglong out. "It is Xianglong's order. This Northern Yen lord has reached the end of his life. He wants to leave behind a stable Northern Yen for his descendants. Naturally, the Temple of Great Light, a place outside the law, has to be dealt with." Of course, Xianglong did not expect to destroy the Temple of Great Light, but his ultimate goal was to bring the Temple of Great Light under the rule of the Northern Yen. Of course, there is a cause and effect. For so many years, the Temple of Great Light has not done anything to provoke the authority of the Northern Yen imperial court in this land of extreme north. This time, Xianglong did not do this for the sake of his descendants, but because your Temple of Great Light has gone too far. Su Yan snorted softly and said, "What has my Temple of Great Light done? As long as a disciple of my Temple of Great Light is able to step into Jianghu, they will abide by the precepts and will not cause trouble." Su Yan dared to say this. The Temple of Great Light had strict precepts. The first thing a disciple did upon entering the temple was not to practice martial arts, but to recite Buddhist scriptures and cultivate their character. Then, after familiarizing themselves with the precepts, they would be assigned to one of the 6 major martial academies or the 3 major meditation halls. Chu Xiu sneered and said, "Is that so? Some time ago, an old monk from your Temple of Great Light's Dharma court killed General Nan Xinli of Donglin County's Iron Guard just because he cultivated demonic techniques. It seems that your Temple of Great Light really hates my demonic path to the core." When he heard this, Su Yan immediately understood what was going on. He knew about this matter, but that old monk was a disciple of the previous generation of the Temple of Great Light. He was extremely senior, and even Su Yan had to call him martial uncle. What else could he do? Punish him? Moreover, the person was from the Dharma court. When the Dharma court's first seat, Su Xing, heard about this matter, he even praised him without restraint, causing Su Yan to feel very helpless. Su Yan was originally prepared to explain himself when the Northern Yen imperial court came to question him. In the end, he did not expect Xianglong to be so agitated by this matter that he did not even question him. Instead, he directly prepared to deal with the Temple of Great Light. Su Yan frowned and said, "But that Nan Xinli used human lives to cultivate demonic techniques, which is a taboo in the pugilistic world. It's pardonable for the Temple of Great Light to take action." Chu Xiu sneered and said, "Master Su Yan, you'd better tell this to Xianglong and not to me. Nan Xinli used human lives to cultivate, but those were Northern Yen prisoners. Moreover, no matter how vicious the demonic techniques he cultivated were, he was first and foremost a member of the Northern Yen imperial court. The Northern Yen imperial court had the right to kill him, but you didn't. Now, you killed him without saying a word, and you even barged into the military camp to kill him. You're impressive and domineering, so you'll naturally have to bear the consequences. Moreover, to put it bluntly, isn't the Temple of Great Light also bullying the weak and fearing the strong when you kill people?" Nan Xinli was a lone cultivator. Apart from his status in the imperial court, he had no backing. However, Chu Xiu have also killed many people. Master Su Yan, you're standing right in front of me. Why didn't you take action to eliminate the demons? Su Yan's face immediately showed anger. Even though he had a good temper, he could not stand Chu Xiu's humiliation. Chu Xiu, are you really prepared to fight the Temple of Great Light to the end? Chu Xiu shook his head and said, "Of course not. If I really wanted to make things difficult for the Temple of Great Light, why would I tell the truth so clearly to you, Master Su Yan? Xianglong is a heartless person, and I'm still a pugilistic world person. Even though I've helped the Northern Yen imperial court do so many things, he still doesn't trust me. This time, he deliberately asked me to do it. He wanted me to fight with the Temple of Great Light to the end, and in the end, draw out the clan of the hidden devil behind me, causing both of us to fight to the point where both sides suffer. The only one who would benefit from this would be the Northern Yen imperial court. So now, I'm only using these little tricks and have not directly attacked the Temple of Great Light. Master Su Yan, you should know very well what this means." Su Yan frowned. Of course, he knew, but it was precisely because of this that this matter was difficult to handle. Touching Chu Xiu would be helping the Northern Yan imperial court, and it would not benefit the Temple of Great Light. The great battle between the orthodox and demonic factions had just ended, and the moon-worshipping cult was heavily injured. The orthodox sects were all recuperating. If they were to have another great battle with the hidden devil faction, not only would the Temple of Great Light not be able to handle it, the other sects might not be willing to help the Temple of Great Light. Looking at Chu Xiu, Su Yan said coldly, "Then how do you plan to deal with it? The group of people surrounding the Great Light Temple must not stay there forever." Chu Xiu had been waiting for Su Yan to say this. He extended 3 fingers and said, 3 months. I only need 3 months. This time is enough for me to account to Xianglong. When the time comes, I will have them retreat. Of course, if the Temple of Great Light is not willing to wait for these 3 months, they can just kill them. If the Temple of Great Light can do something so ruthless, I will concede defeat and avoid the Temple of Great Light from now on. Su Yan snorted coldly, turned around, and left. If the Temple of Great Light dared to kill people, why would he rush to see Chu Xiu now? Behind Su Yan, a smile appeared on Chu Xiu's face. Su Yan did not agree, which meant that he had tacitly agreed. In these 3 months, the Temple of Great Light would not disturb him, which was enough for Chu Xiu to find the things that Lu Jianghu had buried. At the same time, he would be able to account to Xianglong. At the side, Bai Wuji was a little doubtful. Sir, are you sure the Temple of Great Light will not make a move? With the Temple of Great Light's personality, they will not tolerate sand in their eyes. Chu Xiu said calmly, can't tolerate sand? That depends on how big the sand is. Don't think that the Temple of Great Light is really untainted by the mud. In the martial world, everything depends on strength. The things that I have done are 100 or 1,000 times more evil than that Nan Xinli. Why don't I see anyone coming to me to kill demons and defend justice? Because my strength is stronger than that Nan Xinli's. Because my background is also stronger than Nan Xinli's. If the Temple of Great Light really cannot tolerate sand in their eyes, then there would have been no Temple of Great Light in the martial world 500 years ago. Chapter 793. Outside Yanjing City, an old man in a black robe with a gloomy face looked at the city wall in front of him and said in a low voice, "Is this Yanjing City? The northern barbarian land is not as prosperous as the central plains. It's about the same as West Chu." There were a few warriors beside him. One of them, who looked like a rat, immediately smiled apologetically. Master is right. Northern Yan was suppressed by Eastern Qi a few decades ago. It's only now that they've made a comeback. It's good enough that they're at this scale. The old man sneered and said, Chu Xiu doesn't stay in the Central Plains. He hides in this northern barbarian land. It's not good. Several warriors around him said, yes, this time Master is here to teach Chu Xiu a lesson. We can't let go of senior brother's revenge. This old man was the 10 Directions old devil, Yuan Tianfang, and some of his disciples. In the past, during the war between the righteous and the demonic, Chu Xiu killed Yuan Tianfang's favorite disciple, Xing Situ. The two sides had become sworn enemies. However, at that time, Wei Shia stopped him and Dong Huang Tai spoke for him. Yuan Tianfang couldn't touch Chu Xiu even if he wanted to. Moreover, after returning, there were also many big shots of the hidden devil lineage who passed on the message for Yuan Tianfang to calm down. Chu Xiu could not be killed, at least not now. Now, Chu Xiu was the face of the Yinma clan. It was not an exaggeration to say that Chu Xiu was the number one person in the younger generation of the diabolism, let alone the Yinma clan. Such a person could be killed by the people of the righteous martial arts world, but he couldn't die in the hands of his own people. The entire Devil Dao was originally divided into the Bright Devil and the Hidden Devil lineage. Moreover, the Hidden Devil lineage was not united. If there was a matter of people killing each other, then they would lose all their face. Therefore, it was fine for Yuan Tianfang to kill Chu Xiu, but he had to wait until Chu Xiu was no longer so eye-catching. Even Wei Shuya and the others were disappointed in him. Then, he could kill Chu Xiu without any worries. However, Yuan Tianfang thought about it carefully. With Chu Xiu's strength and the potential he had displayed, he was afraid that he wouldn't be able to wait for that day. After all, he wasn't young anymore. The more Yuan Tianfang thought about it, the more he couldn't take it lying down. So, he personally brought a few of his disciples from the northern Yan land to cause trouble for Chu Xiu. Of course, Yuan Tianfang was not going to kill Chu Xiu directly. If he could, he would have done it long ago. Yuan Tianfang was planning to push Chu Xiu out of the way, so much so that he had no place to stand in the northern Yan. At this moment, a dissatisfied rebuke was suddenly heard. "I say, what are you guys doing? If you don't want to go, then get out of the way. A good dog doesn't block the way, understand?" Yuan Tianfang and the others were standing at the city gate, seemingly blocking the way of a small family's caravan into the city. Others could take a detour, but the small family's caravan had a lot of vehicles, so they couldn't go around it. At this time, in front of the caravan, a young man was pointing at Yuan Tianfang and scolding him, looking extremely impatient. A steward beside him wanted to stop him. After all, it was better to avoid trouble when they were outside. It was not good to cause trouble, but his hands were not as fast as the young man's mouth. Yuan Tianfang turned around and glanced at the young man expressionlessly. It was this glance that caused the young man's face to immediately reveal an expression of endless fear, as if he had seen something extremely terrifying. The other people in the caravan didn't feel anything, but they didn't dare to move a step. Yuan Tianfang turned back and walked into Yanjing City with his disciples. At this time, the caravan finally dared to move, as if the paralysis spell had been lifted. "Young master, young master." The manager of the merchant group pulled on the young man who was still in a daze. However, in the next moment, the young man's entire body seemed to have melted. His bones, flesh, and blood all turned into a pile of mud. Only a piece of human skin with a terrified expression was left behind. This immediately caused a wave of terrified screams. Yuan Tianfang walked on the street and snorted, "Barbarians have no manners at all. Can't you even say please? Where is the palace? Take me to see Xianglong." It was difficult for others to see the northern Yan emperor, but it was very easy for an expert of Yuan Tianfang's level. He directly stood at the gate of the palace and released a bit of his true fire spirit refinement realm aura. Immediately, experts from the palace came out to ask about it, and then respectfully welcomed him into the palace. In a hall in the palace, Xianglong looked down at Yuan Tianfang and said in a deep voice, "May I know why Mr. Yuan has come to the northern Yan?" The name, 10 Directions Old Demon, Yuan Tianfang was still very famous in the martial world. The moment Yuan Tianfang appeared, someone had already handed over all his information to Xianglong. As for Yuan Tianfang's sudden visit, Xianglong was also confused and didn't know why. Yuan Tianfang was from the Central Plains. After being humiliated in western Chu's Longhu Mountain, he spent most of his time in the East Pole Mountain near the East Bay. He wouldn't go out unless there was something important, and he rarely came to the northern Yan. Yuan Tianfang didn't even raise his head. He said indifferently, "I'm not used to talking to people with my head up." For an expert like Yuan Tianfang who had reached the true fire spirit refinement realm, the world's imperial power was bullshit. Even the current northern Yan and eastern Qi were great countries in the world. For a small country like the Wei Kingdom, the predecessor of Wei County, Yuan Tianfang, as an expert of the true fire spirit refinement realm, could easily destroy a country. Therefore, he treated Xianglong the same way he treated the leaders of some great forces, or even worse. Because those leaders at least had some strength, but Xianglong didn't even have the strength. Yuan Tianfang could crush him with one finger. Of course, the reason he didn't crush him was that in the northern Yan court, there were also experts who could stand shoulder to shoulder with him. For example, as soon as he said that, he felt several auras shrouding him. Xianglong waved his hand and said indifferently, "Mr. Yuan is right. It'll be easier to talk if we're closer." With that, Xianglong walked down the high platform and sat opposite Yuan Tianfang. He said in a deep voice again, I wonder why Mr. Yuan has come to the northern Yen this time. This time, Yuan Tianfang nodded with satisfaction and said, I have come to deal with Chu Xiu. He killed my disciple. This matter can't be settled like this. Xiang Long frowned slightly. Just as Yuan Tianfang didn't like Xiang Long who could control such a great power, Xiang Long also didn't like the boring grudges and vendettas in Jianghu. Therefore, Xiang Long said directly, Mr. Yuan, if you have a grudge against Chu Xiu, then you can go directly to Chu Xiu. Why have you come to the Northern Yen Palace? Moreover, Mr. Yuan, do you know that Chu Xiu is the governor of the Northern Yen Jinwu Hall? Are you telling me this because you want me to help you kill Chu Xiu? I can't kill my own subjects as I please. Yuan Tianfang snorted and said, what is the Jinwu Hall? It's just a child's play. In short, I want Chu Xiu to have no place in the entire Northern Yen. Get rid of him and your Jinwu Hall will be supported by I. Whether you want to use this old man or that Chu Xiu bastard, you better think carefully before you speak. Hearing Yuan Tianfang's words, Xiang Long's eyes suddenly lit up. Yuan Tianfang was an expert in the true fire spirit refinement realm. Although the Northern Yen Imperial Court also had a few experts of this level, no one would complain about having too many of them. Most importantly, Xiang Long gradually felt that he seemed to be unable to suppress Chu Xiu. The Jinwu Hall was an institution of the Imperial Court in name, but in fact, it was Chu Xiu's own people. Including those martial arts forces, they did not surrender to the Northern Yen Imperial Court, but to the Jinwu Hall. The people of the pugilistic world were always people of the pugilistic world. It was too difficult to make them completely his subjects. Moreover, what Chu Xiu did this time also made Xiang Long somewhat dissatisfied. The little tricks that Chu Xiu played did indeed open up the Jinwu Hall in the bitter and cold land of the extreme north, but this was not enough. Xiang Long's real intention was to let the Yinma clan behind Chu Xiu fight with the Great Guangming Temple. As a result, Chu Xiu made such a move. He had an excuse, but the Great Guangming Temple did not really make a move. This was too far from Xiang Long's plan. However, he could not directly tell Chu Xiu that he was using him to fight with the Great Guangming Temple. In that case, both sides would directly shed all pretense of cordiality. Originally, Xiang Long placed Daoist Wuyang into the Jinwu Hall to suppress Chu Xiu. As a result, it seemed that this Daoist Wuyang was too useless. He was so frightened by Chu Xiu that he did not dare to show his face, let alone fight with Chu Xiu. Now, the appearance of this Yuan Tianfang gave Xiang Long a very good choice. After pondering for a while, he said, if this is the case, I will appoint Mr. Yuan as the Jinwu Hall's Grand Elder, the same level as Chu Xiu. What do you think? However, the Imperial Court is fair. The position is given to you, but the Imperial Court will not favor you or Chu Xiu for other things. Yuan Tianfang curled his lips and said, you people like to do these useless things. I do not need you to favor me. After saying that, Yuan Tianfang turned and left directly. He did not even say goodbye. Xiang Long looked at Yuan Tianfang's back without the slightest expression on his face. At this time, an old eunuch walked out from the darkness and whispered, Your Majesty, this Yuan Tianfang is not a good person. This person had a feud with Taoism in the early years. Countless Taoism masters died in his hands. If it was not for Dragon Tiger Mountain that finally scared him away, this person's reputation would probably be even worse. Xiang Long said lightly, Don't worry, I also know the depth. If this Yuan Tianfang was another Chu Xiu, I might not dare to use him. However, this person is a standard demonic villain. He is powerful and cruel, but he acts crazily, does not use his brain, and does not know propriety. There are only two endings for such a person. One is to be killed in the early stage, and the other is to become stronger in the killing and become a true demonic villain. This Yuan Tianfang is the latter. I dare to use such a person. On the contrary, I do not want a second person like Chu Xiu to appear. Chapter 794. Chu Xiu didn't know what was happening in Yanjing City. He only had 3 months. At the very least, he had to use these 3 months to find all 3 of Lu Jianghe's buried treasures. Chu Xiu was so angry that his teeth were itching. He didn't know if Lu Jianghe did it on purpose, but finding the 3 places was like trying his luck. He had found one by accident, but he hadn't found the other 2. When he asked Lu Jianghe, he said that it had been 500 years and that he was sleeping. How could he remember so clearly? Moreover, the places where the blood of the experts was buried had a mark left by Lu Jianghe himself. In his words, if his body was still there, he would be able to feel it even with his eyes closed. Of course, he didn't have to remember it so clearly. After digging for a month, Shen Feiying hurriedly came back to report, "Sir, we have dug up an underground palace. However, it seems to be a little different from the first underground palace. The method you gave us to break the formation is also unable to do so." Chu Xiu narrowed his eyes. He finally found it. Fortunately, there were no problems this time, and he got the thing smoothly. Speaking of which, Chu Xiu had a feeling that his luck wasn't too good. People like Lu Fengxian were sitting at home and treasures fell from the sky. This was called luck. Looking at Chu Xiu, he had never been nimble in doing anything. Things that he thought were in the bag would suddenly have some accidents. This time, it was finally neat and tidy. "Bring me there." When Shen Feiying brought Chu Xiu over, the family heads and sect leaders of the major forces were all there. Seeing everyone's eager eyes, Chu Xiu said indifferently, "Everyone, the things in this underground palace are a little sensitive, so we won't share them with you. There is still one more underground palace that we haven't excavated. Everyone, please continue to work hard, and the things inside will be shared equally." Although Chu Xiu had said at the beginning that there were only 2 underground palaces with hidden treasures, everyone could tell with one look that the things in this underground palace were the real treasures. However, anyone with a discerning eye could tell that the items in the underground palace were the real treasures. They were so precious that Chu Xiu was unwilling to share them with everyone else. But since Chu Xiu said so, everyone present didn't dare to say anything even if they were envious. Competing with Chu Xiu for treasures was simply courting death. Lu Jianghe transmitted a secret method to Chu Xiu in his mind. After opening the formation, Chu Xiu asked Shen Feiying to guard the door with his men while he entered the underground palace. Because this underground palace only preserved the blood of the experts, it wasn't too big, only the size of a house. The formation in the center automatically absorbed the surrounding power of heaven and earth, using it to nourish the blood inside, making the martial Tao true meaning even more powerful. Chu Xiu looked up and saw 2 boxes floating in the middle of the formation. One of the boxes had several small compartments, each with a scarlet drop of blood, exuding different auras. Some were shining with Buddha's light, and some were surging with sword qi. The other box only had a drop of blood, and it didn't emit any aura. It looked very ordinary, very ordinary. But the magical thing was that when Chu Xiu closed his eyes, he couldn't feel the existence of that drop of blood. It was as if it only existed in Chu Xiu's eyes and didn't exist in this world. "Lu Jiang," he said excitedly, it seems that the nourishment of the blood here is very successful. Kid, you got lucky. I'll teach you the blood shadow great technique now. You just need to absorb and refine these blood beads according to the method above. Oh yes, don't forget to keep the blood bead of the palace master of 7 absolute palace for me." As he said that, Lu Jianghe directly taught it to Chu Xiu through his mental strength. Lu Jianghe didn't hide anything from him. Anyway, he was in such a state now, so there was no need to hide anything. In fact, the blood shadow great technique was very simple. It should be said that it wasn't a cultivation method, but a way of using the blood divine demonic technique. In the blood soul bead, Lu Jianghe waved his hand, and countless blood shadows flew around him quickly. Looking carefully, these blood shadows turned out to be different human shapes. Some were holding sabers, and some were using swords. Tens of thousands of martial paths fused into the blood shadow, and its power was quite shocking. Chu Xiu almost understood that this blood shadow great technique was actually using the power of blood and qi, and then using the blood of these former powerhouses as a guide, it simulated a part of the other party's power in the past. Although it was only a part, the strength of these powerhouses in the past was indeed very strong. If all of them were simulated, the power must be extremely terrifying without even thinking about it. Chu Xiu placed the drop of blood belonging to the palace master of 7 absolute palace on the blood soul bead, and it was instantly swallowed by the blood soul bead. After swallowing the drop of blood, Lu Jianghe's remnant soul also became more solid, and there was a qualitative change. On the other hand, Chu Xiu began to refine the blood beads one by one with the blood shadow great technique. In an instant, the sword intent on Chu Xiu's body soared into the sky, the Buddha's light filled the air, and the power of various attributes kept erupting in his body, which made Chu Xiu couldn't help but let out a few muffled groans. The blood shadow great technique only had one bottleneck, and it had to be combined with the blood and qi of these former powerhouses, completely refining it into one's own power. But these powerhouses were characters who could be ranked on the sovereign list in the past, and even the power left behind by a drop of blood couldn't be underestimated. Therefore, if a weaker cultivator came here, it was estimated that they would first explode before they could practice the blood shadow great technique. Fortunately, with Chu Xiu's strength, this step was only a little tricky for him, so it wasn't too difficult. Therefore, Chu Xiu successfully refined all the blood beads. After refining these blood beads, Chu Xiu turned his eyes to Dugu Weiwei's drop of blood. At this time, Lu Jianghe suddenly said, "Hey, boy, you'd better be careful. This is a drop of the sect master's blood, and it's not the same as the others. If you want to forcibly refine it, I'm afraid that something will happen to this lord." It can be said that even if this lord was at his peak, this lord wouldn't dare to so rashly refine a drop of the sect master's blood. Chu Xiu was surprised and said, "Oh, you actually care about me? If something happens to me, shouldn't you be the happiest one?" Lu Jianghe curled his lips and said, "Boy, don't be unappreciative of my kindness. This lord is reminding you. Cooperating with you, boy, this lord can at least get some benefits. But if you die, and the blood soul bead is taken by those idiots outside, maybe this lord will be like in the hands of those Earth Demon Hall bastards, sleeping all day." Before, Lu Jianghe was indeed a little resistant to Chu Xiu, but later he found that this boy, Chu Xiu, was somewhat in line with his temperament. Most importantly, he could see the benefits of being together with Chu Xiu. This guy's luck really wasn't very good, always running into all kinds of trouble. But after these troubles, there were always some benefits. Just like that 9-tailed heavenly fox's remnant soul last time, and now this 7 absolute palaces palace lord's fresh blood, these were all pretty good things. If there were benefits coming in all the time, reckon that before long, no need for Chu Xiu to let him go, he himself would be able to break this blood soul bead. Chu Xiu stared at that drop of Dugu Weiwei's fresh blood and said coolly, "So what if Dugu Weiwei? Putting it aside and not using it, could it be that you still want to take it back and worship it? The Kunlun devil cult has long perished." As he said, Chu Xiu directly reached his hand towards that blood soul bead. This was not that Chu Xiu was unable to tell good from bad, but he very much wanted to know what kind of changes would occur after he refined this drop of Dugu Weiwei's fresh blood. After all, from this period of experience, Chu Xiu also knew that his involvement with Dugu Weiwei was somewhat too deep. When Lu Jianghe saw this scene, he could not help but shake his head. Young people were just too impatient, too impatient. However, at this moment, Lu Jianghe suddenly opened his eyes wide. He saw that drop of Dugu Weiwei's fresh blood directly integrated into Chu Xiu's body, without the slightest obstruction. In an instant, Lu Jianghe's mental strength was directly kicked out of Chu Xiu's body, and he could no longer communicate with Chu Xiu. Moreover, an extremely pure demonic aura bloomed from Chu Xiu's body. That was the purest demonic aura, containing no impurities. If there was clarity, there would be turbidity. If there was yin, there would be yang. If there was righteousness, there would naturally be demons. That demonic aura integrated the negative forces of this world into one, and it itself was a part of heaven and earth. A natural demon, known as a heavenly demon. Indestructible heavenly demon book. Lu Jianghu instantly lost his composure, a look of disbelief flashing in his eyes. The power on Chu Xiu's body now belonged to Dugu Weiwei's power in the past. In the entire pugilistic world, only Dugu Weiwei cultivated this shocking and powerful demonic art. A natural demon, coexisting with the world. The people of the world clamored to exterminate demons, but they did not know that if there were no demons, then what was the point of the righteous path's existence? Therefore, this demon was a force that inevitably existed between heaven and earth, coexisting with the world, immortal and indestructible. The indestructible heavenly demon book created by Dugu Weiwei was precisely to cultivate this shocking and powerful martial Dao true meaning. When it reached the grand accomplishment stage, it could be said to be truly immortal and indestructible, coexisting with the world. As long as the world existed, the demon would also exist, and he would have an immortal body. However, this kind of thing was too shocking. Even its creator, Dugu Weiwei, had not cultivated it to the extreme peak. However, Lu Jianghu was extremely familiar with this kind of power. This was definitely the power that belonged to Dugu Weiwei, and it was not brought about by that drop of blood. What was left in the blood was the martial Dao true meaning, not this kind of pure power. But, how could it appear on Chu Xiu's body? Looking at Chu Xiu's whole body wrapped in pure demonic qi, Lu Jianghu had a thoughtful look on his face, but he could not figure it out no matter how hard he tried. He suddenly realized that he seemed to have never clearly seen through this kid. Previously, Lu Jianghu thought that he was a demonic path disciple who had obtained a part of Dugu Weiwei's inheritance. After all, he was from the Yinma lineage. But like the indestructible heavenly demon book, Dugu Weiwei had never spread it out, and he had never accepted a disciple. This Chu Xiu had too many secrets, so many that even he could not see through them. Chapter 795. Darkness, Scarlet, Silence, and Oblivion. Chu Xiu was surrounded by such an environment. The darkness was oppressive, the scarlet was sinister, and the silence was eerie. In the end, he sank into oblivion. At this moment, everything around him suddenly lit up. However, after it lit up, Chu Xiu suddenly sucked in a breath of cold air. It wasn't that Chu Xiu was making a fuss about nothing, but the world in front of him was simply too frightening. Even Chu Xiu's worldview was refreshed. At this moment, he seemed to be on a boundless sea, but what flowed beneath his feet was murky yellow sewage, emitting a pungent stench. There were 3 full moons in the sky. Although there were 3 moons, their brightness was extremely dim. The strangest thing was that the 3 moons were scarlet. Of course, what was even stranger was that Chu Xiu was currently standing on the back of a huge skeleton. The skeleton was humanoid and over 30 meters tall. It had already decayed into a skeleton. But what exactly was this thing? Was it a giant or an ancient demon god? At this moment, the murky yellow surface of the water began to churn. Countless ferocious evil spirits hid under the surface, constantly churning and wailing. A scarlet color rose from the murky yellow surface of the murky yellow water, and a white bone throne that shone with an evil light was lifted by the sea of blood. A figure was sitting on the white bone throne. He was clearly wearing a black robe, but he shone with a glaring, ferocious bloody light. The moment he saw this person, Chu Xiu's expression changed. Dugu Weiwei. This person's appearance was exactly the same as the Dugu Weiwei that Chu Xiu had seen in the illusion. Chu Xiu wanted to remember his appearance so that he could ask Lu Jianghu when he got out. However, for some reason, even though this person was clearly in front of him, Chu Xiu couldn't describe his appearance completely. He couldn't even remember it in his heart. You are resisting. Dugu Weiwei, who was sitting on the white bone throne, suddenly opened his mouth. Under the murky yellow water surface, the countless evil ghosts and vengeful spirits suddenly fell silent, as if they were afraid of this person. Chu Xiu's expression changed slightly. Although this was not the first time he had seen Dugu Weiwei, the previous few times he had seen Dugu Weiwei should have been a projection left behind by Dugu Weiwei. This time, however, the other party seemed to have a real thought. When you learn that your existence is a mystery, don't you resist? I just want to ask, who am I? Chu Xiu gazed at Dugu Weiwei and voiced out the biggest question in his heart. Only a lunatic or an idiot could ask such a question as who am I? Chu Xiu was neither crazy nor stupid. He was just a person involved in the situation, unable to see through the fog in front of him. You are me, and I am you. Me, it's us. Chu Xiu frowned and said, what do you mean? Am I your reincarnation, or a body that you have taken over? A smile appeared on Dugu Weiwei's face. As long as Heaven's will is not defeated, the demon master will not die. As long as you are not dead, I will not be defeated. Since I am not dead, how can I reincarnate? I will not take over my own body either. There is no need to resist. When you reach the peak, you will naturally see me. I will be waiting for you here. Dugu Weiwei's words caused Chu Xiu to frown. If he was not reincarnated or taken over, then what was he? Chu Xiu suddenly raised his head and said coldly, as long as I am not dead, you will not be defeated. What if I die now? Dugu Weiwei suddenly laughed loudly. Die? You can't bear to die. I have said before, you are me. Using your own life to threaten yourself, I will not do such a stupid thing, and you will not do the same. After laughing, Dugu Weiwei retracted his smile. There is not much time left. I can only leave this much in this drop of blood. This is a seed left for you. Chu Xiu's expression changed slightly. You have calculated that Lu Jianghe will fall into my hands 500 years later? You can know what will happen 500 years later? Dugu Weiwei said indifferently, Heaven's sun gazing at Qi, killing while talking. You use the Heaven's sun gazing at Qi to see people, but the real Heaven's sun gazing at Qi sees the world. I can see everything in the world, but I only use it to look at Lu Jianghe. Can't I see through him? Otherwise, do you think Lu Jianghe would be able to obtain this drop of blood 500 years ago? At this moment, Chu Xiu suddenly understood many things. Was everything that he saw after transmigrating really the future? Relying on his foresight, Chu Xiu obtained many things. He obtained the glazed golden thread gu and the Heaven's sun gazing at Qi. But the more time passed, the more vague his memories of the future became. Now, Chu Xiu seemed to have understood that the so-called future might not be real, and might not always happen. The future that he saw was only the future that someone deduced, making him think that this was the real future. Chu Xiu still wanted to say something, but Dugu Weiwei said, time is up, I will wait for you here. The moment he said that, 3 blood moons fell from the sky. In the turbid yellow river, raging waves surged and tore apart countless evil spirits and ghosts. The entire space instantly collapsed. When Chu Xiu's mind returned to the underground palace, Lu Jianghe was hiding in the blood soul bead, looking at Chu Xiu with vigilance. Who are you? Are you really the reincarnation of Patriarch Dugu? The power that burst out in that instant was definitely the power of the indestructible heavenly demon book. It was the power that belonged exclusively to Patriarch Dugu. Thinking that this lad's appearance was exactly the same as Patriarch Dugu's Earth Soul incarnation, Lu Jianghe also had some doubts about Chu Xiu's identity. Chu Xiu was also looking at Lu Jianghe at this moment. To speak the truth, he felt some pity for this guy. This guy had been trapped for 500 years, maybe from the start. Dugu Weiwei had done it on purpose. The value of his existence was that he thought he was smart enough to obtain a drop of Dugu Weiwei's blood, but then he did a stupid thing and was trapped for 500 years. Until now, he gave Chu Xiu a drop of blood, or as Dugu Weiwei called it, a seed. At first, Chu Xiu was still doubtful. Dugu Weiwei's temper seemed to be quite bad, but now it seemed that all of this was a trap. He remembered that the ancestor of the Shadow Mountain sect, Daoist Wuwang, was once a member of the Kunlun Devil cult. After he betrayed the Kunlun Devil cult, he was not completely eliminated by Dugu Weiwei. Although Lu Jianghe was a little stupid and said something he shouldn't have, it was a little too harsh to have his physical body destroyed and sealed. It turned out that all of this was planned. Looking at Lu Jianghe, Chu Xiu said calmly, "All right, I admit it. I am Dugu Weiwei's reincarnation. Seeing that the cult master is here, why aren't you kneeling down and telling me all of your secrets? Lu Jianghu choked all of a sudden, with an expression of, I'd be a fool to believe you. If Chu Xiu continued to be secretive, he might have some doubts, but now that Chu Xiu said it like this, he didn't believe it. Of course, he also had doubts, but if Chu Xiu didn't say it, he couldn't do anything. After going out, Chu Xiu directly cultivated in the floating snow city in the extreme north for a while. He wanted to familiarize himself with the blood shadow technique, and Dugu Weiwei said that he left a seed in his body. Chu Xiu didn't know what this so-called seed was. Anyway, he didn't feel any changes in his body. However, just as Chu Xiu began his retreat, there were already changes in the Jianghu Hall. Yuan Tianfang's character was almost the same as that of his disciple, Xing Situ, who died in the hands of Chu Xiu. He was sinister, vicious, and crazy. He was a standard devil. The only difference from Xing Situ was that Yuan Tianfang was, after all, a big boss of the Yinma clan. He still had some general situation and vision. Xing Situ had a whim to frame Chu Xiu at such a critical moment in the war between the righteous and the devil. Yuan Tianfang wouldn't have done that. Of course, this didn't mean that Yuan Tianfang would be soft-hearted. At this time, after receiving Xiang Long's order, Yuan Tianfang immediately let his disciple take over the Jianghu Hall. Back in the Devil Cliff Cave of the East Pole Mountain, Yuan Tianfang accepted a lot of disciples, but in fact, most of his disciples were just for fun. There were only a few who could inherit his true inheritance. Xing Situ was one, and this time, the disciple he found in the northern Yan, Duanzhou, was another. Duanzhou looked like a wretched thief, but in fact, he was the first among Yuan Tianfang's disciples to step into the martial Dao Grand Master realm. He also made a name for himself in the northern Yan Wulin as the Blood Soul Demon Hand. Yuan Tianfang had cultivated countless devil skills in his life. Duanzhou didn't inherit all of Yuan Tianfang's skills. He only inherited a martial art that could extract human blood and spirit. It was said that its origin could even be traced back to the strongest hall under the Kunlun devil cult, the Blood Demon Hall. It was very powerful. This time, Yuan Tianfang came to the northern Yan to avenge Xing Situ, and Duanzhou could be said to be the most active one. He didn't care who killed Xing Situ. He was even a little jealous of Xing Situ. It was obvious that he was the first to become Yuan Tianfang's disciple. In the end, among Yuan Tianfang's many disciples, Xing Situ was the most favored one. Why? Therefore, Duanzhou had no interest in avenging Xing Situ at all. He had been in the northern Yan for many years, but after learning that Xing Situ had died in the hands of Chu Xiu, he didn't even show his face. This was enough to show his standpoint and thoughts. This time, Duanzhou was so active only because Xing Situ was dead. It could be said that he was the most outstanding among Yuan Tianfang's many disciples. As long as he served Yuan Tianfang well, Yuan Tianfang's inheritance of skills and all kinds of secret treasures would be his. With this thought in mind, Duanzhou directly strode into the Jianghu Hall and shouted, "Is there anyone in charge in the Jianghu Hall? Come out and greet me." Several martial artists guarding the door just wanted to stop him, but they were blown aside by Duanzhou. At this time, Peng Hu walked out with a long saber in his hand and snorted coldly. Who dares to cause trouble in the Jianghu Hall? Mei Qinglian came out behind Peng Hu. When she saw Duanzhou, her expression couldn't help but change slightly. She wanted to stop Peng Hu, but it was too late. With Peng Hu's bad temper, he was already fighting with Duanzhou. Chapter 796. Mei Qinglian recognized Duanzhou, who was also very famous among Yuan Tianfang's disciples. However, no matter how famous he was, Duanzhou could not be compared to Chu Xiu, let alone the entire Jianghu Hall. The Jianghu Hall had been established in the entire northern Yan for a long time, but Duanzhou did not even dare to show his face. Mei Qinglian was very clear about what his sudden appearance here meant. If it was just Duanzhou, he would not have the guts to provoke the Jianghu Hall. What Mei Qinglian was really worried about was Yuan Tianfang, who was behind Duanjiao. At this time, Pang Hu had already exchanged blows with Duanjiao. Within a few moves, Pang Hu had already gained the upper hand. There were also differences in strength between martial Dao Grand Masters. Some people, even if they became martial arts masters, were unknown, while some people were ranked on the Fengyun list and stirred up the Jianghu. Although Duanjiao was a martial arts master, he did not receive the true teachings of Yuan Tianfang. His strength could only be said to be passable among martial artists of the same level. Pang Hu, on the other hand, was one of the 36 northern bandits who had experienced countless hunts. The strength of the two could not be compared at all. Just as Duanjiao was at a disadvantage, a cold snort was suddenly heard. Dark clouds gathered in mid-air, and a giant demonic hand stretched out from the vortex, smashing Pang Hu's saber momentum and causing him to vomit blood and retreat. Mei Qinglian's expression changed. Demonic mist surged in her hands, wanting to catch Pang Hu, but she was also forced to retreat by the strong force. At this time, Lu Fengxian appeared beside Mei Qinglian. The two of them joined forces to catch Pang Hu, who was seriously injured and vomiting blood. As Yuan Tianfang stepped into the Jianghu Hall with many disciples, the martial artists in the Jianghu Hall suddenly had a change of expression. This was a powerhouse in the true fire spirit refinement realm. In the past, the Jianghu Hall had also been attacked by a powerhouse in the true fire spirit refinement realm. That person was Fang Jinwu. However, at that time, Chu Xiu was there, but now that Chu Xiu was not there, who could they find to take over? It had to be said that Chu Xiu rarely took action in the suppression martial hall, and even Chu Xiu was too lazy to care about some of the details. However, Chu Xiu's position in the Jianghu Hall was absolutely like a pillar. Lu Fengxian frowned and was about to rush out with halberd. Lu Fengxian had the courage to attack even when facing a true fire spirit refinement realm expert. However, Mei Qinglian pulled Lv Fengxian back, not letting him do anything stupid. Not everyone was like Chu Xiu, who dared to kill the existence of the real fire spirit refinement state at the real pellet state. Mei Qinglian frowned and said, "Senior Yuan, what do you mean by this? Are you deliberately looking for trouble? You are a senior of the Yinma clan, so you should naturally know what the Jianghu Hall represents. It is also the interest of the entire Yinma clan. If you come to take revenge because of some personal grudges, will you ignore the rules of the Yinma clan?" Yuan Tianfang sneered and said, "That girl from the Yin demon sect is quite sharp-tongued, just like those seniors of yours. Listen carefully, I didn't come to take revenge, but to fight for more benefits for my Yinma clan. I had already asked Xiang Long for a position as the great elder of the Jianghu Hall, which is not inferior to Chu Xiu. It just so happens that Chu Xiu is not here, so now, the Jianghu Hall is under I's management. Yin demon sect's little girl, I advise you not to hang yourself on a tree. Chu Xiu won't be stable for long." Yuan Tianfang was relatively polite to Mei Qinglian. In the past, Yin demon sect was definitely regarded as a big sect in the entire Yinma clan. It was an extremely powerful branch. If Yin demon sect was still here, its power would not even lose to the current phaseless demon sect. Moreover, even if the Yin demon ancestor was no longer around, the connections that the Yin demon ancestor had accumulated in the past were still there. These connections did not only refer to Wei Shiya. Therefore, Yuan Tianfang would not touch Mei Qinglian unless he completely fell out with her. With a wave of his hand, Yuan Tianfang's disciples and grand disciples all entered the Jianghu Hall. Some of these people were his personal disciples, and some were his grand disciples. On the contrary, all of them looked strange and ferocious. They didn't look like good people at first glance. Chu Xiu is not here. Now the Jianghu Hall is under I's management. Yin demon sect's little girl, be sensible and leave with the others." There were many martial Dao masters in the Jianghu Hall, but Pang Hu had been seriously injured. Lu Hongye's strength in the real pellet state could only be regarded as mediocre. Only Lu Fengxian and her were left. How could they fight? So she stopped the angry Lu Fengxian, and Mei Qinglian said in a deep voice, "Okay, since Senior Yuan is willing to share the pressure of the Jianghu Hall, then we will give it to you." After speaking, Mei Qinglian waved her hand and led everyone back into the Jianghu hall. Seeing this scene, Duan Zhuoao immediately came over and smiled apologetically. Master is indeed master. With one move and one word, he made those people retreat. However, this time Duan Zhuoao's flattery hit the horse's leg. Yuan Tianfang directly slapped Duan Zhuoao, causing him to stagger. He then snorted coldly, "Look at how much your strength has regressed after all these years of slacking off on your cultivation. Pang Hu is just a casual martial artist who used to be a bandit. In the end, you didn't even have the slightest strength to fight back. You might as well die." Duan Zhuoao felt wronged but did not dare to refute. Pang Hu was one of the 36 northern bandits. In his early years, his strength was already not weak. Moreover, although Pang Hu also came from an unorthodox background, he had his own cultivation martial path. How could he be like Duan Zhuoao, who did not even learn some of his master's special skills and still had to be beaten in the end? Yuan Tianfang snorted coldly and said, "Bring the others and take over the Jianghu hall. If you can't even do such a small thing, then what use do I have for you?" Duan Zhuoao nodded repeatedly and immediately brought people to deal with the matter. Of course, the so-called handling was just taking it for granted. They could just do whatever they wanted. Although Duan Zhuoao had a master, he had long finished his apprenticeship and came to the northern Yen to make a living. Although he had strength, in fact, his ability was the same as a casual martial artist. As for his fellow apprentices and disciples, they were all the same. It was already considered good that they did not cause any trouble. Lu Fengxian was pulled back to the room by Mei Qinglian, while Pang Hu was sent to Miracle Dr. Feng Buping for treatment. "Senior Mei, why did you pull me just now? Even if we are no match for Yuan Tianfang, we can't just watch him take away Brother Chu's foundation so easily, right?" Mei Qinglian patted Lu Fengxian and snorted lightly, "Why do you call me senior? Don't you know that women don't like to be called senior? Call me sister." After lecturing Lu Fengxian, who had a straight EQ, Mei Qinglian said, "Don't be impulsive. Do you think this old guy is a vegetarian? He spared Pang Hu's life and didn't make a move against me because he was still worried about his identity as a member of the hidden devil lineage. On the contrary, if we really infuriate him, with this old guy's character, we can't be sure what he will do. At that time, besides running for our lives, we can't even stay in the Jianghu hall. To fight with this old guy, we still have to rely on Chu Xiu. The key is to call him back as soon as possible." Lu Fengxian frowned and said, "We are both from the hidden devil lineage, yet Yuan Tianfang dares to do such a thing. Isn't he afraid of Senior Wei Shi's anger?" Mei Qinglian shook her head gently. Lu Fengxian was not a member of the hidden devil lineage. She did not know how serious the intrigue in the hidden devil lineage was. If it was an ordinary matter, Wei Shi could completely suppress it. But this time, Chu Xiu had killed his most beloved disciple. Wei Shi could suppress it for a while, but he could not suppress it for a lifetime. As a matter of fact, Yuan Tianfang had come to the door. Moreover, it was already beyond Mei Qinglian's expectations that Yuan Tianfang could endure for such a long time. Lu Fengxian did not ask too much about this matter. He just said, "In that case, I will inform Brother Chu." Mei Qinglian shook her head and said, "There is no need for you to make a trip. The hidden devil lineage also has many secret communication methods. There is a communication formation in the floating snow city in the extreme north. Just now, I have already instructed Tangya to secretly send it over. Now, Chu Xiu should have received the news." Originally, Chu Xiu planned to retreat in the floating snow city in the extreme north for a period of time. However, on the second day, Bai Wuji hurried over and handed Chu Xiu the news from the Jianghu hall. After reading what was said, Chu Xiu's expression suddenly became gloomy. Courting death. Yuan Tianfang was courting death. Xiang Long was also courting death. It was normal for Yuan Tianfang to want revenge, but Xiang Long was also adding fuel to the fire. It seemed that he really wanted to play the trick of cooking the hound after the hare was killed. The Jianghu hall was the foundation that Chu Xiu had developed with great efforts. He would not just sit back and watch Yuan Tianfang destroy the Jinwu Hall. Therefore, after instructing Bai Wuji to let the others leave after 3 months, Chu Xiu immediately returned to the Jinwu Hall. In the few days that Chu Xiu rushed back to the Jinwu Hall, Yuan Tianfang's men had already made a mess in the Jinwu Hall. What was the responsibility of the Jinwu Hall? For Xianglong, the Jinwu Hall was responsible for suppressing the Northern Yan martial arts world, making it safe and stable, and not causing trouble for the imperial court. For Chu Xiu, the Jinwu Hall was to make the Northern Yan martial arts world forces, large and small, surrender to the Jinwu Hall. While reducing losses, they would offer offerings to the Jinwu Hall in exchange for protection and profit. What were Yuan Tianfang's men doing? They acted recklessly, blackmailed the major forces, did not follow any rules, and acted completely according to their own preferences. In just a few days, the forces that were originally under the Jinwu Hall had been miserable. Most of these forces were not so close to the Jinwu Hall. They did not choose to surrender to the Jinwu Hall before, so they stayed here and did not go to the bitter and cold land of the extreme north. But now it seemed that it was better for them to be sent to the bitter and cold land of the extreme north to dig things. At least it was better than now. Therefore, after Chu Xiu returned to Yanjing City, before he returned to the Jinwu Hall, a group of masters of large and small forces surrounded him and complained about all kinds of grievances. Looking at those people, Chu Xiu said faintly, "Everyone, when I was here, you were not willing to join the Jinwu Hall, and you even clamored that I, Chu Xiu, was cruel. Now you can see that I am cruel because I want you to follow the rules. Have you experienced the consequences of not following the rules?" Chapter 797. Sometimes, people were so despicable. When someone was around, they would gnash their teeth in hatred. However, when someone else was around and their situation became worse, they would start to miss that person. That was how everyone present felt at the moment. Although Chu Xiu did things cruelly, there were rules. At the very least, he would leave you a way out. However, Yuan Tianfang's disciples and grand-disciples didn't care about anything and really forced you onto the path of death. Chu Xiu did not care about them. He shook off the crowd and stepped into the Jinwu Hall. Inside the Jinwu Hall, even the gatekeepers were replaced by Yuan Tianfang's disciples and disciples. Seeing that Chu Xiu was about to enter the Jinwu Hall, someone immediately scolded and intercepted him. "How dare you? Do you know where this is? How dare you barge in?" Yuan Tianfang's disciples could be considered to have been transferred home. Yuan Tianfang came for Chu Xiu, but this group of small fries did not know what was going on. They did not even recognize Chu Xiu. With a cold snort, Chu Xiu's body flashed with a bloody light. The martial artist immediately seemed to be smashed by a heavy hammer. He hit a wall and fell to the ground. "How dare you? Who dares to cause trouble in my Jinwu Hall?" Duan Zhou walked out and could not help but be stunned when he saw Chu Xiu coming back. Shouldn't this guy be fighting to the death with the Great Light Temple in the bitter north? Why did he come back so quickly? "Your Jinwu Hall?" "I'll let you say it again. Which Jinwu Hall is it?" Chu Xiu looked at Duan Zhou. The aura around him seemed to condense into a substance. It was like a black cloud pressing down on a city, almost making Duan Zhou breathless. In Duan Zhou's eyes, there seemed to be a sea of blood behind Chu Xiu. The powerful pressure penetrated deep into his soul and made him tremble. In Chu Xiu's mind, Lu Jianghu sneered and said, "It turns out that he is just a trash who has learned a little of the Blood Demon Hall's cultivation method. Chu Xiu, you can kill him in 3 moves." Chu Xiu said indifferently, "You think too highly of him. He's lucky to be able to survive that one move." At this moment, Duan Zhou's heart was filled with fear. He wanted to be tough, but in the end, he realized that he didn't even have the courage to curse back. Before meeting Chu Xiu, Duan Zhou was still plotting in his heart how he could help his master push Chu Xiu out of the Northern Yan Kingdom, so that Chu Xiu would have no place to stand. But when they met, he realized that he did not have the courage to do so. At the same real pellet state, some people could be called Wu Dao Grand Master, and some could only be a real pellet state martial artist. Duan Zhouao was the latter. Although he was also a little famous in the northern Yan, compared with Chu Xiu, who was famous in the martial world and even killed a real fire god refinement state powerhouse, the gap was simply too big. Moreover, although he was jealous of his junior fellow apprentice, he had to admit that Xing Situ's martial arts talent was much better than his. As a result, Xing Situ died in the hands of this Chu Xiu. What about me? Fear grew in Duan Zhouao's heart. As Chu Xiu stepped out, Duan Zhouao actually panicked and took a step back. He almost fell to the ground. It could be said that he was extremely embarrassed. In fact, Duan Zhouao was not so timid and useless. No matter what, he had been in the martial world for decades, and he even reached the real pellet state. His hands were stained with countless blood, and he even had a real fire god refinement state powerhouse as his master. But when he met Chu Xiu, he just happened to meet his nemesis. The technique he cultivated was just some corner of the old demonic blood technique. He didn't know how it spread out. What Chu Xiu cultivated was the authentic blood god demonic technique created by Lu Jianghu. To Duan Zhouao, this was an extremely powerful suppression. It caused the fear in his heart to be magnified 100 times. It was as if he had seen his natural enemy. Trash. Useless thing. Yuan Tianfang had already come behind Duan Zhouao and kicked him away. The aura around him became more violent. The surrounding weather was affected by him, and it became extremely gloomy. Chu Xiu, are you going to behave atrociously in Ai's territory? Yuan Tianfang stared at Chu Xiu with undisguised murderous intent in his eyes. Your territory? I have been running the Jianghu Hall for so long. When you come, it becomes your territory? Chu Xiu said coldly. Yuan Tianfang sneered. The identity of the Jianghu Hall's Grand Elder was given by the Northern Yan Emperor. If you are not convinced, you can reason with him. In the end, wouldn't they still be schemed against by others? No matter whose territory this is, Ai is the biggest here, so it is naturally Ai's territory. Yuan Tianfang's words were extremely explicit. He even looked down on Xiang Long and called him the Northern Yan Emperor. Of course, he really didn't put Xiang Long in his eyes. At this time, Yuan Tianfang couldn't wait for Chu Xiu to fight him in front of everyone. That way, he would have a reason. He was not looking for trouble with Chu Xiu, but Chu Xiu had offended his superior, so he had to clean up the sect. Don't think that the diabolism lineage could recklessly kill people, especially the Yin Ma lineage. In order to avoid losses, everyone tried to avoid being hostile with the martial artists of the same lineage, for fear that both sides would suffer. Therefore, as long as Chu Xiu still had the title of the first person in the younger generation of diabolism, Yuan Tianfang couldn't kill him openly. Otherwise, it would attract the attention of Wei Shuya and other big shots in diabolism. On the other hand, if Chu Xiu took the initiative to attack him, it would be disrespecting his superior and not understanding the rules. Even if Yuan Tianfang killed him on the spot, he would have an excuse and explanation. On this point, whether it was the sects of the righteous Tao or the diabolism, they were all the same. No matter what they did, they had to put on a dignified excuse first. Otherwise, wouldn't it be a mess if they killed indiscriminately? Staring at Yuan Tianfang, Chu Xiu's mouth suddenly curled into a smile. Yuan Tianfang, just because of that disciple of yours, you didn't go to East Pole Mountain and insisted on coming to the Northern Yan to compete with me. Is it worth it for a dead man? When Yuan Tianfang heard Chu Xiu mention Xing Situ, a murderous glint flashed across his eyes. I only had one successor that I had spent so much effort to nurture, yet he was killed by you. Don't you think it's worth it? Chu Xiu, you have Wei Shuya to protect you, so I won't kill you for the time being. However, there is still no place for you in the Northern Yan. I will now give you a choice. Destroy your own martial arts to atone for your sins. Otherwise, forcing you out of the Northern Yan is just the first step. It's not a good feeling to be targeted by a true fire spirit refinement realm expert. Duan Zhouao, who had been kicked away by Yuan Tianfang, felt a burst of jealousy. If Xing Situ was your successor, then what was I? Chu Xiu laughed coldly and said, don't continue to mingle in the Jianghu when you're old. All you talk is nonsense. After saying that, Chu Xiu turned and walked directly into the inner hall. Yuan Tianfang frowned. Didn't they say that Chu Xiu was insolent and impulsive? At this time, he was very calm and didn't make a move. This was somewhat unexpected to Yuan Tianfang. In the inner hall, Mei Qinglian and the others were all there. Chu Xiu's previous subordinates were also gathered here. Under Mei Qinglian's constraints, if Yuan Tianfang's people wanted to take over the Jianghu Hall, he could just let them do it. Chu Xiu was not there, so it was not appropriate to fight recklessly. Yuan Tianfang didn't dare to kill Chu Xiu, but he dared to kill the people of the Jianghu Hall. Seeing that Chu Xiu had come, Mei Qinglian said in surprise, that's strange. You didn't make a move. I thought you were ready to fight with Yuan Tianfang, the old guy, as soon as you came back. Chu Xiu narrowed his eyes and shook his head. The time is not right. I'm not sure if I make a move now. After all, the true fire spirit refinement realm is the true fire spirit refinement realm, and Yuan Tianfang's strength is not comparable to Fang Jinwu's. Even if I give Yuan Tianfang the broken intestine gu now, Yuan Tianfang's strength is estimated to be comparable to Fang Jinwu's peak. Moreover, even if I can kill Yuan Tianfang, it will also be a problem. The Yinma lineage people are not good at anything else, but they are good at meddling in other people's business and fighting among themselves. Yuan Tianfang is one of the big shots of the Yinma lineage. If I kill him now, it will be a violation of the rules. Mei Qinglian frowned and said, if it doesn't work, then ask Senior Wei to come. Chu Xiu shook his head and said, it's useless. Yuan Tianfang got Xiang Long's fate and has an excuse. Even if Senior Wei comes, what can he do? It's nothing more than setting up a battle array and confronting him. In the end, it will definitely end in a lose-lose situation, and we will still suffer. After all, the Jianghu Hall is a force that I have run for a long time. Why would Yuan Tianfang feel distressed? It's enough to just care about destruction. There is a saying that Yuan Tianfang is right. The feeling of being targeted by a true fire spirit refinement realm powerhouse is not good. Mei Qinglian and the others also furrowed their brows. It seemed like it was true. Sometimes, one's strength could really accomplish everything. Just like now, Yuan Tianfang was here to cause trouble for Chu Xiu. He didn't even have a plan, let alone a scheme. He just came to Chu Xiu's door and destroyed whatever Chu Xiu did. This made Chu Xiu feel very uncomfortable. Then what are you going to do? Mei Qinglian asked. Chu Xiu's eyes flashed with a cold light and said, wait first. We don't have the right time, the right place, and the right people. Of course, Yuan Tianfang is also the same. Most importantly, I found a problem. What problem? Chu Xiu said with a trace of disdain, Yuan Tianfang is old, afraid. To put it bluntly, he is even worse than his disciple, Xing Situ. For a long time, the impression that Yuan Tianfang gave people was that of an extremely crazy demon. He killed all the 3 great Taoist sects except the Celestial Master Mansion. But from an unknown time, Yuan Tianfang's heart was full of all kinds of scruples. For example, now, if Yuan Tianfang was still so crazy, unscrupulous, and wanted to kill, then as long as he didn't care about anything, directly came to Chu Xiu, gave up his face, and launched a surprise attack on Chu Xiu. Even if Chu Xiu did not die, he could only flee. But since he had scruples and did not dare to kill Chu Xiu openly, there was a loophole. The opportunity would always come. Chapter 798. In Chu Xiu's eyes, Yuan Tianfang was old, afraid, and had misgivings in his heart. But in Yuan Tianfang's eyes, wasn't Chu Xiu the same? After returning to the Jianghu Hall, Chu Xiu immediately holed up inside, not even daring to show his face. This also made Yuan Tianfang and his subordinates more and more arrogant. They could be said to be unscrupulous. Although there were many complaints in the Jianghu, and even the northern Yan imperial court had some complaints, Xianglong did not intervene. Moreover, to Xianglong's surprise, Chu Xiu did not appear to look for him. This made Xianglong feel very strange. He wanted to see how long this Chu Xiu could last. However, before Xianglong arrived, someone else had already found him. It was Daoist Wuyang. Seeing that Chu Xiu was actually still in seclusion in the Jianghu Hall, Daoist Wuyang could not help but say, "I say, official Chu, that old guy Yuan Tianfang has gone too far. Aren't you going to do something about it?" Previously, when Chu Xiu was in charge of the Jianghu Hall, Daoist Wuyang did not have much power, but at least his pitiful strength was not seized by Chu Xiu. Now that Yuan Tianfang was in charge of the Jianghu Hall, his group of disciples had no scruples. Even the power that originally belonged to Daoist Wuyang was directly seized. That Zhuao Daoist Wuyang was not in his eyes at all. He was also afraid of Yuan Tianfang. Chu Xiu said indifferently, "That is an expert in the true fire spirit refinement realm. His position in the Yinma clan is even higher than mine. What do you want me to do? Since I can't beat him, I'll just keep a low profile." Daoist Wuyang, you are a sensible person. You don't have to encourage me here. I won't make a move now. Daoist Wuyang looked suspiciously at Chu Xiu. As far as he knew, this was not Chu Xiu's character. Was he, Chu Xiu, the kind of person who would endure silently? Moreover, since Chu Xiu said that he would not make a move now, did that mean that Chu Xiu would make a move in the future? However, it was clear that Chu Xiu did not wish to say anything. Thus, Daoist Wuyang could only leave for the time being. After Daoist Wuyang left, a cold glint appeared in Chu Xiu's eyes. It wasn't that he couldn't tolerate it, but it depended on whether there was any value in tolerating it. Now that the opportunity had not come, of course, he had to endure for the time being. If there was a chance, Chu Xiu would not be like Yuan Tianfang, who had scruples about this and that. In terms of craziness, in fact, Chu Xiu was not inferior to the young Yuan Tianfang. At this moment, in Yanjing City, a monk in gray robes in his 30s followed the flow of people and walked silently into the city. This monk in gray robes had the strength of the unity of heaven and human realm. At this age, he was not considered weak. He wore a bamboo hat, like a wandering monk that covered his face. However, at this moment, under the bamboo hat, was a face that hid hatred and murderous intent. This monk was called Zongping, and he was a disciple of the Great Light Temple's Vajra courtyard. Of course, he also had a layman's name, Feng Changfeng. His father was the head of the Feng family, who had been publicly killed by Chu Xiu as a warning to others. The Great Light Temple was selecting disciples in the entire northern lands. The head of the Feng family could be said to be ecstatic that Zongping was able to enter the Great Light Temple. Although the Great Light Temple would not take the initiative to help a small family like the Feng family, there was Zongping. Everyone knew that his son was a disciple of the Great Light Temple, and he was also Zongxian's junior brother. In the future, he would definitely be able to borrow some glory, so all the major forces were very polite to the Feng family. Not long ago, Zongping received news that the entire Feng family had been annihilated. To be honest, Zongping did not like the Feng family, and he did not like that father of his. His mother was only one of his father's dozen or so concubines, and she was frail and sickly. When he was born, his mother died from a difficult labor, so he was also seen as an inauspicious person. From the time he was born, the amount of time he had spent with his father was not as much as when he had been selected as a disciple of the Great Light Temple. Furthermore, he did not like that utilitarian father of his and the Feng family, which was not big, but had a lot of scheming. However, no matter what, that was still his home, the Feng family that he was born into. After learning this news, Zongping did not eat or drink for 3 days. The elders of the sect had tried to persuade him to let it go. When could all the gratitude and grudges, right and wrong, be settled? Unfortunately, Zongping's Buddhist Dharma cultivation was not up to par. He understood all these principles. Once he became a monk, he would be completely cut off from the secular world. The Great Light Temple could not possibly fight to the death with Chu Xiu for the family of a disciple like him. Furthermore, Zongping's background would also gain the sympathy of the teachers of the Great Light Temple, and they would take more care of him. However, principles were principles, and choices were choices. His family had been destroyed, and his hatred was as deep as the sea. Zongping could not let go of this hatred. Even though he knew that the other party was a famous devil in the pugilistic world, and he was just a little monk from the Great Light Temple, Zongping still came. He held a porcelain bottle tightly in his arms. That was the key to Zongping's confidence in taking revenge. Although the two of them were only one realm apart, this realm was a world of difference. Zongping did not even dare to dream about killing Chu Xiu with his own strength. Therefore, if he wanted to kill Chu Xiu, he could only rely on external forces. That porcelain bottle contained the 7 Knights devouring heart powder of the 5 poison sect. Even if a martial arts grandmaster came into contact with it, as long as they did not have the antidote within 7 days, they would definitely die. Speaking of which, Zongping's possession of this thing was related to Chu Xiu. Originally, the pugilistic world was very disdainful of all kinds of venomous insects, poisons, and the like. They thought that it was just a small trick and would not amount to much. However, since the last time Chu Xiu used the broken intestine insect to kill Fang Jinwu, this kind of despicable thing was recognized by people. As long as you had a certain level of strength, coupled with this kind of external object, once you performed well, it was not difficult for the weak to defeat the strong. Therefore, since that time, many people in the pugilistic world were collecting these things, and the Great Light Temple was collecting these insidious things. This 7 Knights devouring heart powder was obtained from a bandit from West Chu after Zongping killed him. Presumably, that person wanted to sell this thing to Northern Yen and make a big profit. In the end, before he could hand it over, Zongping learned that even his family had been destroyed. In Zongping's view, this was the cycle of heaven and retribution. This was Chu Xiu's retribution. Looking at the huge Yanjing city, Zongping furrowed his brows. He had been to Yanjing city before, but he was not very familiar with it. Most importantly, he was not familiar with Chu Xiu. Even if he wanted to poison him, he had to first find out about Chu Xiu's information, and then get close to Chu Xiu. Looking around, Zongping walked into a random restaurant in Yanjing city. Zongping was not a greenhorn in the pugilistic world. Among the Zong generation in the Great Light Temple, he was considered to be quite strong, so he had long been in the pugilistic world. He was very familiar with the various secrets and tricks of the pugilistic world. He did not understand Chu Xiu's information habits, but others did, such as wind-sweeping tower. Wind-sweeping tower's anemophilia liked to stay in the restaurant the most, because it was accessible from all directions, and the information was the best. Sure enough, on the top floor of the restaurant, there was a warrior in his 30s, who was dressed in luxurious clothes, but had his sleeves rolled up. He had 2 folding fans on his back, and he had 2 small mustaches on the corners of his mouth. He looked neither fish nor fowl, and he was bragging with a circle of warriors. Zongping walked to his side, and whispered, "There's a big business coming." When that anemophilia heard the words big business, he immediately became excited, and waved his hand, saying, "I'll tell you about the righteous and demonic wars later, I'm here for business." For anemophilia, the thing that could make them the most excited was to discover big news, and the other was to sell big news. Bringing Zongping into the private room, that anemophilia asked, "What kind of news would this master like to buy?" Zongping said lightly, "How do you know I'm a master? Just because someone wears a monk's robe, does that mean he's a monk?" That anemophilia chuckled and said, "Of course, someone who wears a monk's robe is not necessarily a monk, but I can guarantee that master is definitely a monk, and a monk from the Great Light Temple. Master, every move you make has a certain regularity. Only the disciples of the Great Light Temple would be so strict when they first enter the sect, through all kinds of exercises that train the disciples' perseverance and patience. And master, your right hand is always subconsciously placed below your heart, that's obviously the action of twisting the prayer beads often. Adding all these together, if you're still not a monk, then I can't think of any other possibilities." Zhongping nodded and said, "The wind agent of the wind-sweeping tower really lives up to his reputation." That anemophilia smiled and said, "Master, please excuse me. May I ask what kind of news Master is prepared to buy?" Zhongping said in a deep voice, "News about Chu Xiu. Everything about Chu Xiu's daily routine, and so on." That anemophilia suddenly shivered, and hurriedly said, "Master, it's not that I don't want to sell it to you, but you also know Chu Xiu's identity, it's too sensitive, I really don't dare to sell it. If you really want it, go to the headquarters of the wind-sweeping tower and buy it from the tower master and the deputy tower master. Only they would dare to sell this kind of news." Zhongping frowned. Just to buy a piece of news, did he have to go so far to Eastern Qi? And the news he got from Eastern Qi was also outdated. "What are you afraid of?" "Afraid of Chu Xiu?" The wind agent from the wind-sweeping tower smiled bitterly and said, "In the whole of northern Yan, how many people can you find who aren't afraid of Chu Xiu?" Zhongping said coldly, "You're afraid of Chu Xiu, but aren't you afraid of me? Do you really think that a monk wouldn't dare to kill?" Zhongping's body bloomed with a murderous intent. He had also killed people, and not just a few. Of course, most of them were demonic villains or bandits. This time, he was forced into a corner and could only resort to this kind of coercion. Don't. "Master, please calm down, I'll sell the information." "No. I'll give it to you for free, Master. I just hope that you won't tell anyone about me." Hearing that anemophilia said so, Zhongping said calmly, "Don't worry, I know the rules of the wind-sweeping tower, I won't reveal any of my plans. However, during this period, you must send me information at all times, or else, you know the consequences." After taking the information about Chu Xiu, Zhongping left the restaurant. However, behind him, the news agent from the pugilistic world changed his terrified expression. He spat in disdain and said, "Even the monks from the Temple of Great Light are here to fight? No matter how ruthless you are, can you be more ruthless than that lord? You were the one who broke the rules first, so don't blame me for being too quick with my mouth. After all, I'm old acquaintances with that lord." Chapter 799. Zhongping thought that he was very lucky, but in fact, he was very unlucky. Yanjing City was so big, and there were countless wind agents from Wind-Sweeping Tower and some small forces. In the end, he picked a wind agent who was related to Chu Xiu. The wind agent who was interrogated by Zhongping was called Lu Yu. He was not a big figure in Wind-Sweeping Tower, but he had some fame in the northern Yan branch of Wind-Sweeping Tower. But a few years ago, when Lu Yu was still in Yendong, he was the first wind agent from Wind-Sweeping Tower to cooperate with Chu Xiu. It could be said that when Chu Xiu was able to enter the Longhu list, although it was Qi Yuanli who made the decision, it was Lu Yu who brought the news. Several years had passed, and Chu Xiu had gone from an itinerant cultivator of the pugilistic world in the past to a prominent figure of the demonic path whose name had shaken the pugilistic world. He could even be said to be the #1 figure of the younger generation of the demonic path, possessing astonishing might. As for Lu Yu, he was much more normal. The promotion of anemophilia in Wind-Sweeping Tower was not very fast. Wind-Sweeping Tower followed the rules, and the more information you could get, the higher your position would be. But Northern Yan was naturally flawed, and the power of the martial arts world could not compare with Eastern Qi or even Western Chu, so there were not many big events. Lu Yu used a few years to go from anemophilia in Yendong to anemophilia in Yanjing City, the capital of Northern Yan, and he was one of the people in charge. A monk from the Great Light Temple came to buy information about Chu Xiu, and it was such a fierce monk. Even an idiot could see that this was definitely not a good thing. Wind-Sweeping Tower had a rule that they could not leak information about their customers, but the monk just now was not a customer, and he even threatened him. Since this was the case, there was no problem for him to leak information about him. Most importantly, Lu Yu's intuition told him that there was definitely big news to be dug out. If he could become a witness to all of this, his status in Wind-Sweeping Tower would definitely rise after he obtained the news. Although Zhongping had wandered the Jianghu and had some experience, he had forgotten one thing: everyone had their own selfish motives. He had been too credulous in trusting Yuren, even though Wind's Sweeping Pavilion had a good reputation. During this time, Chu Xiu was only in the Jianghu Hall for closed-door training. He was interrupted when he was familiarizing himself with the blood shadow technique, so he could make up for it successfully this time. Someone reported that an old friend had come to visit. This made Chu Xiu feel strange. What old friend did he have in northern Yen? After Lu Yu was invited in, Lu Yu cupped his hands at Chu Xiu and said with a smile, "I wonder if official Chu still recognizes me?" Chu Xiu narrowed his eyes as he looked at Lu Yu. He felt that he looked familiar, but he couldn't recognize him. After all, so many years had passed, and Lu Yu was just a minor character at that time. Lu Yu didn't mind. It was normal for Chu Xiu not to remember him, so he directly said, "I am Wind Intermediary Lu Yu of the Northern Yen branch of Wind's Sweeping Pavilion. Official Chu bought a lot of information from me when he was still in the Heavenly Sin branch of the Blue Dragon Society." Hearing Lu Yu say this, Chu Xiu suddenly remembered and said, "Oh, so it's you. Brother Lu's information has helped me a lot in the past." Lu Yu hurriedly said, "I don't dare to call myself official Chu brother. This time, I came to give you a piece of news, official Chu." Chu Xiu raised his eyebrows and said, "Oh? What news?" Lu Yu said in a deep voice, "Someone wants to kill you, official Chu." Chu Xiu said with a faint smile, "There are at least 8,000 people in the pugilistic world who want to kill me. Who knows, someone might be gnashing their teeth and wanting to cut me into pieces right now. You don't need to tell me, I know." Lu Yu touched his head and smiled awkwardly. "I didn't make it clear. The person who wants to kill you, official Chu, is someone from the Great Light Temple. Furthermore, he has already arrived at Yanjing City and forcefully asked me for information on you, official Chu. You know my strength. I can't resist at all, so I can only obey. However, I only gave him information about you, official Chu. There aren't any deep secrets." Chu Xiu frowned and said, "The Great Light Temple wants to kill me? That shouldn't be. If the Great Light Temple wanted to make a move, they would have done it when Su Yan came back then. Why would they wait until now?" Lu Yu explained, "It's Zong Ping, a disciple of the Great Light Temple's Vajra department. He's a disciple of the Feng family. His father died in the hands of official Chu some time ago, and the Feng family was also destroyed by you, official Chu." Wind Sweeping Tower's information was very detailed. Unless you were really unknown, as long as you had the slightest bit of fame in the pugilistic world, Wind Sweeping Tower would record you. On the way here, Lu Yu had successfully obtained detailed information on Zong Ping. Chu Xiu touched his chin. So that was the case. However, he did not mind. Among the Great Light Temple's Zong generation of martial artists, other than Zong Xian, no one else had stepped into the realm of martial arts grandmasters. To the current Chu Xiu, those below the martial arts grandmaster level were like ants. He did not need to care about them. Over the years, he had destroyed many clans and sections. The number of people who wanted to kill him could form an entire sect. However, Lu Yu was just a junior martial artist. If not for the fact that he was from the Great Light Temple, Lu Yu would not have come to report to him to claim credit. However, at that moment, Chu Xiu suddenly thought of something. A cold gleam flashed in his eyes, which gave Lu Yu a fright. Chu Xiu suddenly asked, "This Zong Ping wants to kill me. What do you think he'll do? Or has his mind been eroded by hatred, and he's prepared to kill me just like that?" Lu Yu hesitated for a moment. He did not know why Chu Xiu asked that. However, he thought about it and said, "Although this Zong Ping hates official Chu to the core, he doesn't seem crazy. He's very clear-headed when he does things, and he won't be impulsive or reckless. If he wants to kill you, there's only one simple way, and that's to poison you. Back then, you used the gut-rupturing goo to cause Fang Jinwu's strength to plummet. In the end, you were able to kill him. Right now, Zong Ping might be thinking of the same thing. Using something like poison to weaken official Chu's strength to the lowest level might work. Not everyone knew the details of how Chu Xiu killed Fang Jinwu. Only those who had truly studied Chu Xiu knew about it. Everyone could only see that Chu Xiu had used a despicable method to kill Fang Jinwu with poison. However, in reality, if this method was so useful, the strongest sect in the pugilistic world would be the Five Venoms Order. However, in reality, using poison was extremely difficult. Ordinary martial arts grandmasters were battle-hardened existences. They were very sensitive to any abnormal factors, and their perception was already very shocking. Therefore, even if the poison was really colorless and tasteless, and there was no way to detect it, for those above the martial arts grandmaster level, they could still sense the danger and thus avoid the disaster. The last time Chu Xiu succeeded in using the goo, it was mainly because Chu Xiu had controlled Fang Jinwu's disciple, Chen Jinting, and used him to use the goo, which lowered Fang Jinwu's vigilance to the lowest. Chu Xiu narrowed his eyes and said, "Did Zhong Ping ask you to provide him with real-time news about me?" Lu Yu hesitated for a moment and nodded. Chu Xiu said, "Then tell him later that I'll be having dinner with Yuan Tianfang at the Flourishing Moon restaurant in Yanjing City in 3 days." Lu Yu looked at Chu Xiu in surprise. What is he trying to do? He had already revealed the news to Chu Xiu about someone like Zhong Ping. He didn't even need to do anything himself. He could easily crush the other party by sending a few of his elites. As a result, Chu Xiu seems to be fishing just to catch Zhong Ping. Is it interesting? Lu Yu was very puzzled, but after meeting Chu Xiu's eyes, he immediately nodded and said, "No problem, Official Chu, I will do it immediately." Chu Xiu nodded with satisfaction and said, "Not bad, then I will trouble you with this matter. I have a good relationship with Qi Yuanli of your wind-sweeping tower. I will mention you in front of him. Also, what do you want by giving me such news?" In the early years, Chu Xiu did have some cooperation with Lu Yu, but it was limited to cooperation. The friendship between the two sides was not too deep. Everyone in the world came for benefits. Now that the other party was in a hurry to not send the news to him, even an idiot knew that Lu Yu must have a plan. Lu Yu laughed and said, "Official Chu, don't be offended. What I want is actually very simple. I just want to stay by your side during this period of time. I want to see how you take back the Jianghu Hall. This is great news." Chu Xiu looked at Lu Yu with a faint smile and said, "Your wind-sweeping tower must know about Yuan Tianfang's matter. He is an expert in the true fire spiritual refinement realm. Why are you so confident in me?" Lu Yu nodded and said, "If it was someone else, of course I wouldn't have confidence. However, if it is you, Official Chu, I can guarantee that the Jianghu Hall will definitely return to your hands in the end." "Why?" "Because you are Chu Xiu." A smile appeared on Chu Xiu's face. The people of Wind's sweeping tower were indeed eloquent. Their flattery was naturally not explicit. It was quite fresh and refined. After Lu Yu left, he immediately sent a message to Zhong Ping. After receiving the news, Zhong Ping immediately began to disguise himself. With Lu Yu's active help, he changed into a fake identity and sneaked into the Flourishing Moon Pavilion in advance. As for Chu Xiu, he asked Mei Qinglian to send a message to invite Yuan Tianfang to the Flourishing Moon Pavilion for a talk. Both parties were in the Jianghu Hall, but Chu Xiu insisted on taking him outside to talk. In Yuan Tianfang's view, Chu Xiu was afraid that he could not hold on and was ready to give in. However, Yuan Tianfang did not intend to let Chu Xiu go. How could he let go of the hatred of his disciple's murder? However, Yuan Tianfang still agreed to Chu Xiu. He just wanted to humiliate Chu Xiu on the spot. In the past, when he wanted to make a move on Chu Xiu, not only did Wei Shiya come forward to stop him, but Dong Wang Tai also spoke up for him. He was an expert in the true fire spiritual refinement realm and also a big shot of the hidden devil lineage. He wanted to deal with a junior, but he was still so aggrieved. This had long made Yuan Tianfang furious. Now, it was time to return the favor. Chapter 800. In the Flourishing Moon restaurant, Chu Xiu had been waiting there for a long time. According to Lu Yu's information, Zhong Ping was already lurking in the Flourishing Moon restaurant. Chu Xiu waited in the Flourishing Moon restaurant for about 2 hours before Yuan Tianfang arrived. He deliberately left Chu Xiu hanging. Chu Xiu, boy, what do you want to say by asking I to come here? Is there anything that can't be said in the Jinwu Hall? Yuan Tianfang sat opposite Chu Xiu with a look of contempt. Chu Xiu said indifferently, Senior Yuan, it's true that I killed your disciple, but it was Xing Situ who wanted to kill me first. If someone wants to kill me, of course I'll kill them. I didn't do anything wrong in that feud. Yuan Tianfang sneered, you, Chu Xiu, didn't do anything wrong, but Xing Situ was my disciple. His disciple was killed and his master came to take revenge. That's not wrong either, is it? Chu Xiu shook his head and said, revenge breeds revenge, when will it ever end? My position in the Hidden Devil clan has been established. Unless you want to completely fall out with the Hidden Devil clan, you can't kill me. Yuan Tianfang snorted coldly and said, position? Chu Xiu, you're so naive. Do you really think your position is invulnerable? Even if Wei Shiya came, he wouldn't dare say that. Chu Xiu narrowed his eyes and said, then Senior Yuan, you really don't want to reconcile? Yuan Tianfang said coldly, I've said it before. As long as you, Chu Xiu, cripple your own martial arts, then I won't pursue it. Otherwise, there's nothing to talk about. Just as the atmosphere between the two of them was at daggers drawn, Zhong Ping, who was disguised as a waiter, walked in. He lowered his head and placed the wine and dishes in front of Chu Xiu and Yuan Tianfang. Zhong Ping's disguise was quite good. It was unknown what method he used, but he managed to seal all of his power. Even Chu Xiu did not notice the slightest leakage of gang qi. However, his disguise was very ridiculous in the eyes of Chu Xiu, who was meticulous, and Yuan Tianfang, who was an old monster in Jianghu. He could hide his strength, but he could not hide his killing intent. He could not hide the habits he had developed over the years of practicing martial arts. Not to mention Chu Xiu and Yuan Tianfang, even Lu Yu could see it. At this moment, Zhong Ping was also very nervous, and his hands were even trembling slightly. To be honest, he didn't expect Yuan Tianfang to tag along. His target was not Yuan Tianfang, but Chu Xiu. But if he gave up this opportunity, he didn't know when he would have to wait. Therefore, he could only make a bet. He bet that Chu Xiu would eat something first, and that he would attack immediately after he was poisoned. Moreover, he also heard that Yuan Tianfang and Chu Xiu had always been at odds. The two sides had a grudge against each other for killing their disciples. If he took action, would Yuan Tianfang hit him when he was down? With this purpose, Zhong Ping stared at Chu Xiu and watched Chu Xiu pick up the cup. But before Chu Xiu could drink it, Yuan Tianfang suddenly threw the wine cup, swept away all the wine and dishes on the table, and shouted angrily, Chu Xiu. You actually want to kill me? It's fine if you use the same method to deal with Fang Jinwu, but you dare to use it against I. Do you really think I dare not kill you? Yuan Tianfang moved his hand and directly grabbed Zhong Ping's neck. He didn't give Zhong Ping a chance to speak at all. He directly strangled him and threw him to the side. Monstrous devil qi bloomed from his hand, directly forming a huge devil qi vortex in midair. The giant hand stretched out from it, sealed the space, and went straight for Chu Xiu. The moment the giant hand of devil qi appeared, the top floor of the entire Flourishing Moon restaurant suddenly exploded, causing the people downstairs and on the long street to be shocked. Even the people in the palace stared at the two of them. Yuan Tianfang was really bold to the extreme, and also extremely angry to the extreme. He completely ignored the rules and actually made a move in the city. The lethality of an expert in the true fire refining realm was too great. Therefore, at this level, unless it was a battle to exterminate the opponent's family, both sides would try to avoid fierce battles in the city as much as possible. With their strength, it was not a problem to destroy a huge city in a battle. Chu Xiu sat still. Traces of bloodlines flew around his body, and those bloodlines finally turned into a human-shaped blood shadow. Some were holding a sword, some were holding a Buddhist seal, and some were flashing with blood-colored lightning. The blood shadows flew all over the sky and directly strangled the giant devil Qi hand. Chu Xiu raised his eyebrows. This was the first time he had used the blood shadow great technique, and the effect was unexpectedly good. Although this was just a casual attack from Yuan Tianfang, the opponent was, after all, an existence in the true fire-refining realm. It was not easy for Chu Xiu to block it without hurting himself. Lu Jiang, he said proudly in Chu Xiu's mind, how about it? My blood shadow great technique is good, right? It's a pity that I only collected the blood of a few experts in the heaven and earth mysterious realm. If you can collect 70 or 80, you can push this technique to the peak. Chu Xiu did not respond to Lu Jiang's boasting. Chu Xiu had just used this technique, and he had actually discovered its biggest weakness. It was not in the technique itself, but in its potential. The key point of the blood shadow great technique was not to condense these blood shadows, but to find the blood of those powerhouses and nourish the martial art's true meaning in it. But how many powerhouses in the heaven and earth mysterious realm were there? That was something that could be counted on 2 hands. 70 or 80, Chu Xiu might not be able to live for those years. Moreover, Chu Xiu was in the real pellet state or the true fire refining realm. The blood shadow great technique was very useful. However, once Chu Xiu broke through to the heaven and earth mysterious realm, would the blood shadow great technique that only had the martial art's true meaning of the powerhouses in the heaven and earth mysterious realm be useful? It would probably be vulnerable. Therefore, the biggest shortcoming of this technique was that its growth was limited. It should be said that this technique had no potential at all. That was also Lu Jiang's unique trait. The techniques he created with the demonic blood technique were almost always the kind of techniques that were powerful in the same realm, but had low growth potential. At this time, Yuan Tianfang also looked at Chu Xiu with a surprised expression. Blood god demonic technique. You actually know the blood god demonic technique. In fact, Yuan Tianfang also knew this cultivation method, but what he knew was only the tip of the iceberg. What he taught Duanjiao was this incomplete technique. He didn't expect Chu Xiu to know the complete version of the blood god demonic technique. However, Yuan Tianfang was not surprised for too long. He said coldly in an instant, so what if you know the blood god demonic technique? Even if you have the inheritance of Patriarch Dugu, I will not spare you today. Chu Xiu hurriedly said, Senior Yuan, there must be a misunderstanding. I used the same technique twice, and it was still so obvious. Why would I do such a stupid thing? Take a closer look at the person who died in your hands. Yuan Tianfang was stunned. He turned around to look at Zhong Ping's corpse. With a wave of his hand, Gang Qi directly shattered the disguise on Zhong Ping's body, revealing the appearance of a monk. It's a monk from the Great Light Temple? Even though Zhong Ping was already dead, there were still some traces of cultivation techniques left on his body. Yuan Tianfang had interacted with the monks from the Great Light Temple in his early years, so he could easily recognize them. However, Yuan Tianfang didn't understand why the monks from the Great Light Temple wanted to kill him. Moreover, they used such a despicable method. Chu Xiu smiled bitterly and said, Senior Yuan, I'm sorry. The monks from the Great Light Temple must have come for me. I've always had enmity with the monks from the Great Light Temple. It's normal for them to want to kill me. Senior Yuan, you've been implicated by me this time. Yuan Tianfang frowned and looked around. With a cold snort, he turned around and left. Chu Xiu had already lowered himself so much. Moreover, there were so many people watching. At this time, it was not good for Yuan Tianfang to continue making a move. That would be too blatant. He also somewhat regretted his hesitation just now. If he had continued to make a move just now and pretended not to know who the person who poisoned him was, then even if he killed Chu Xiu on the spot, he would still be able to answer to the hidden devil lineage. It was just a misunderstanding. Couldn't it be a manslaughter? Could it be that Wei Shuya would make him pay with his life? However, now that he had made a move, he had already demolished the entire top floor of the Flourishing Moon restaurant. Under the watchful eyes of everyone, he no longer had a chance to continue making a move. After Yuan Tianfang was released, the smile on Chu Xiu's face disappeared. He walked downstairs and said to the shopkeeper of the Flourishing Moon restaurant, "Later, I'll go to the Jianghu Hall to get the money. Consider it compensation for your losses." The shopkeeper of the Flourishing Moon restaurant hurriedly wanted to say no. He did not dare to go to a place like the Jianghu Hall to get the money. However, before he could say anything, Chu Xiu had already disappeared. In the alley next to the Flourishing Moon restaurant, Lu Yu had long been waiting there. Chu Xiu said to Lu Yu in a deep voice, "Use the fastest speed to spread this news to the Northern Yen martial arts circle. This should not be difficult for your wind-sweeping tower. Moreover, the focus of the publicity is not the conflict between Yuan Tianfang and me, but the fact that he killed a disciple of the Great Light Temple." Lu Yu nodded in understanding. He did not ask much and went straight to deal with this matter. Lu Yu was considered very tactful. He knew what to ask and what not to ask. Now that such a big thing had happened, it was already big news. However, Lu Yu's intuition told him that Chu Xiu should still make a move. In just 2 days, this news had already spread throughout the entire Northern Yen martial arts circle. In fact, it was just the death of a martial artist at the Unity of Heaven and Man realm. Even if the other party was from the Great Light Temple, it would not attract the attention of others. However, the selling point of this news was not Zhongping, but Yuan Tianfang. This old devil had harmed the Eastern Qi martial arts circle and the Western Chu martial arts circle in the past. He seemed to have a grudge against Taoist priests, and almost all the people he killed were Taoist priests. After so many years of not appearing in the martial arts circle, this old devil had now come to the Northern Yen martial arts circle. Instead of killing Taoist priests, he killed monks. This caused the martial arts forces in the Northern Yen martial arts circle to feel insecure. Compared to Chu Xiu, they were obviously more afraid of Yuan Tianfang. Chu Xiu always had a purpose in everything he did. Surrender or die, at least there was a choice. However, when it was this old devil, he killed completely according to his mood. Chapter 801. Zhongping's corpse was sent back to the Great Light Temple. Lu Yu had sent someone to send it back. Su Yan looked at Zhongping's corpse expressionlessly. In the end, he let out a deep sigh. Zhongping was a disciple of the Vajrayard, and he was also the disciple he thought the most highly of. Perhaps it was because of his background, but Zhongping was more hardworking than ordinary disciples. This was because he knew that only the Great Light Temple was his way out. Without the Great Light Temple, he would return to the Feng family's environment of scheming and scheming. When news of the Feng family's annihilation spread, it was Su Yan who personally persuaded him to temporarily let go of these grudges. At the moment, the relationship between the orthodox and demonic paths was sensitive. The Great Light Temple could not possibly fight to the death with Chu Xiu because of Zhongping's personal grudges. At that time, Zhongping had agreed. Su Yan thought that he had already let go of everything. After all, the Feng family did not treat Zhongping very well. In the end, who would have thought that Zhongping would secretly go down the mountain to seek revenge? During this period of time, Abbot Su Ci had been in seclusion ever since the great battle between the orthodox and demonic paths. Su Yun had also gone to seclusion with Su Jing. The two of them seemed to be working together to predict something. Hence, Su Yun had left the matter of Chu Xiu to Su Yan to handle. After much difficulty, he had reached an agreement with Chu Xiu for 3 months. Su Yan still had to deal with other matters of the Great Light Temple. He was so busy that he did not pay attention to what Zhongping had done. Hence, Su Yan blamed himself. Zhongping's death was partly due to his negligence. Chu Xiu. The Great Light Temple will not let this go. Su Yan growled in a low voice. Even with his upbringing, he could no longer suppress the rage in his heart at this moment. He had just reached an agreement with Chu Xiu for 3 months. Initially, he thought that the Great Light Temple would be quieter after 3 months. In the end, who would have thought that Chu Shou would kill a disciple of the Great Light Temple? What did he mean by this? At that moment, the Vajrayard disciple said weakly, "Master, that senior brother Zong Ping was not killed by Chu Shou." Su Yan was stunned. What? He wasn't killed by Chu Shou? Didn't he go down the mountain to seek revenge on Chu Shou? If it wasn't Chu Shou, even if it was Chu Shou's subordinates, the result would be the same as Chu Shou's. The disciple said, "Senior brother Zong Ping died in the hands of Yuan Tianfang, the 10 Directions old devil, who was a true fire spirit refinement realm expert of the Hidden Devil clan." Yuan Tianfang? Why does he want to kill Zong Ping? Su Yan was puzzled. The disciple explained, "It's like this. Senior brother Zong Ping wanted to use poison to weaken Chu Shou's strength. However, no one expected that Chu Shou was not poisoned. Instead, he was discovered by Yuan Tianfang. Maybe Yuan Tianfang thought that senior brother Zong Ping wanted to harm him, so he was killed by Yuan Tianfang before he could explain." Su Yan frowned and said, "Are you sure that Chu Shou didn't spread this on purpose?" The disciple said, "I've already asked around." Back then, many people witnessed this scene. It was Yuan Tianfang who did it. It wasn't deliberately spread. Su Yan rubbed his head. He felt a headache. One Chu Shou was troublesome enough. He didn't expect Yuan Tianfang to appear. If attacking Chu Shou was troublesome, then attacking Yuan Tianfang was no longer troublesome. It was simply courting death. Su Ci, Su Yun, and Su Jing were in closed-door cultivation. If he disturbed them because of a personal grudge of a disciple named Zong, then he really didn't know his priorities. Therefore, Su Yan could only sigh deeply. He sat cross-legged in front of Zong Ping's corpse and recited scriptures. Finally, he said in a low voice, "Go, bury Zong Ping's corpse in the Bodhi forest at the back of the mountain." A few disciples had just carried Zong Ping's corpse away when a disciple came to report that Chu Shou had come to visit. Su Yan's frown deepened when he heard those 2 words. What is he doing here? Although Zong Ping didn't die at the hands of Chu Shou, his death was inextricably linked to Chu Shou. If Chu Shou hadn't destroyed the Feng family, how could Zong Ping have gone down the mountain to take revenge? Moreover, Su Yan hated Chu Shou's ruthless methods to the point that the roots of his teeth itched. While the Great Light Temple was dealing with the moon-worshipping cult, Chu Shou ran amok throughout the northern Yen. He killed wantonly and had no scruples. After the matter with the Great Light Temple was over, the losses on both sides became extremely great. Only the Hidden Devil lineage didn't suffer any losses. Moreover, Chu Shou also rose to fame during that battle and became the #1 person among the younger generation of the demonic path. He was no longer so easy to deal with. Chu Shou was right. It wasn't that the Great Light Temple couldn't tolerate sand in their eyes, but it depended on whether the sand was big enough. The small sand had basically been crushed by the Great Light Temple, but Chu Shou was no longer sand. He was more like a rock with edges. Su Yan thought for a moment and said, "Bring Chu Shou in." In front of the Great Light Temple's mountain gate, Chu Shou was leisurely admiring the scenery outside. The Great Light Temple was majestic and spectacular. He was at the peak of the snowy mountain. At a glance, he could see all the mountains and rivers. Of course, there were some areas that didn't match. There were some small dots around the Great Light Temple. These small dots were the forces that Chu Shou had thrown to dig holes around the Great Light Temple. They were still digging tirelessly, waiting to dig out the last place where the treasures were hidden. Standing here, Chu Shou finally understood how the warriors of the Great Light Temple felt. With this group of people around, it was indeed an eyesore. The few young disciples of the Great Light Temple who were guarding the door looked at Chu Shou with disgust and vigilance. They didn't know what this notorious demonic path murderer was doing at their Great Light Temple. However, when the news that Su Yan had allowed Chu Shou to enter came from inside, these disciples who were guarding the door were even more shocked. A demon whose hands were stained with blood was actually qualified to enter the Great Light Temple? However, their master had given the order, so they could only bring Chu Xiu in reluctantly. Along the way, Chu Xiu was also carefully observing. The Great Light Temple was able to pass down its legacy for tens of thousands of years without any signs of decline. Firstly, it proved that the Great Light Temple's legacy was indeed powerful. Secondly, it proved that the Great Light Temple really had a way of nurturing its disciples. Along the way, Chu Xiu met many young disciples of the Great Light Temple. Even if these disciples had just entered and had not started practicing martial arts, they were all full of vigor. Even if these disciples had slightly weaker potential, their future achievements would be stronger than those warriors who grew up in an environment of scheming and plotting against each other since young. Su Yan brought Chu Xiu into a monastery, where he was waiting for him. Seeing Chu Xiu enter, Su Yan frowned and said, "Chu Xiu, what are you doing here? Aren't you afraid that you'll be able to enter the Great Light Temple, but not be able to leave?" Chu Xiu said calmly, "Master Su Yan even dares to come to the fluttering snow city in the far north to see me, so why wouldn't I dare to come to the Great Light Temple to see you?" Su Yan said exasperatedly, "Speak, why did you come to my Great Light Temple? But if you can't give me a good reason, then you'll have to put in a lot of effort if you want to leave." Chu Xiu put away his joking tone and said in a deep voice, "Regarding the death of your esteemed temple's disciple, I feel that it's a great pity." Su Yan laughed coldly and said, "Chu Xiu, there's no need to say such hypocritical words. You should know Zhong Ping's identity. He came here to kill you, so what are you feeling pity for? Shouldn't you be applauding and cheering?" Chu Xiu shook his head and said, "To others, perhaps I am such a person, but I, Chu Xiu, am not so petty. This is how the martial world is. If I don't kill, others will kill me. I've wiped out the Feng clan and achieved my goal, so I don't regret it. Zhong Ping dared to assassinate me for a clan that did not treat him well. Although it was a narrow escape, he still dared to make a move. This is courage. Such a courageous young man, even if he was my enemy, even if I killed him, I would still praise him. This is not contradictory. Master Su Yan, don't think of people as so evil. A person's death is like an extinguished lamp. Respecting your opponent is also respecting yourself at the same time. Those who insist on slicing their enemies into 1,000 pieces and grinding their bones to dust are all perverts." When Chu Xiu said these imposing words, Lu Jianghu almost went crazy with laughter. This guy actually had the cheek to say that he was magnanimous? Who knew how Zhong Ping had been schemed to death? Zhong Ping probably did not know until his death that his death was not an accident. Furthermore, Lu Jianghu also discovered that the greatest difference between Chu Xiu and Dugu Weiwei was not strength but that he, Chu Xiu, was much more shameless than the church master. He did not even blink when he lied in front of others. Su Yan looked at Chu Xiu in astonishment. It seemed like he had not expected Chu Xiu to say such a thing. However, Su Yan was rather open-minded. He knew that the righteous Tao was the righteous Tao, and the demonic Tao was the demonic Tao. Although they were enemies, they could not deny a person just because the other party was of the demonic Tao. For example, Wuxia of the 9 heavenly mountains' 5 great heavenly demons, the jade-face heavenly demon who had bewitched thousands of girls in the martial world. Su Yan admired that person's courage when facing thousands of people was worthy of his admiration. Although Su Yan wished for nothing more than for Wuxia to die earlier, that way, the hidden demon lineage would have one less expert, one who was clear-headed and rational. Su Yan's tone softened a little as he said, "Let's not talk about this anymore. What exactly do you want by coming here?" Chu Xiu narrowed his eyes and said, "I'm here to help your Great Light Temple take revenge." "Yuan Tianfang, do you want to kill him?" Su Yan was shocked. He had not expected Chu Xiu to say such a thing. However, Su Yan then snorted coldly and said, "Chu Xiu, you're speaking nonsense in my Great Light Temple. Do you really not want to leave?" Chu Xiu said indifferently, "I'm not speaking nonsense. Yuan Tianfang and I have a grudge against each other for killing my disciple. Furthermore, he stole my martial suppression hull. It's normal for me to want to kill him, isn't it?" Su Yan frowned and said, "But Yuan Tianfang is one of your hidden demon lineage's own people. The corner of Chu Xiu's mouth curled up into a strange smile and said, "One of my own people?" "Master Su Yan, you're wrong. Here, there are only those who can be killed and those who cannot be killed. There have never been any of my own people. Yuan Tianfang injured my subordinates, stole my martial suppression hall, and humiliated me in front of everyone. Naturally, he is the kind of person who can be killed." Chapter 802. It was possible for Chu Xiu to come to the Great Light Temple for anything, but Su Yan would never have thought that Chu Xiu would come to join forces with him to kill one of his own. Anyway, from Su Yan's perspective, Yuan Tianfang was one of the hidden devil faction. Just like the Great Light Temple and Sabodhi Monastery, even if they had conflicts, they would not kill each other because they all belonged to the Buddhist faction. But now, Chu Xiu's actions were incomprehensible to Su Yan. Looking at Su Yan's expression, Chu Xiu said calmly, "Master Su Yan, you don't have to worry about why I want to kill one of my own. You just have to think about one thing. That is, killing Yuan Tianfang is beneficial to the Great Light Temple. Yuan Tianfang killed a disciple of the Great Light Temple. This grudge has already been formed. Moreover, Yuan Tianfang is the big boss of the Yinma lineage, a powerhouse of the true fire spirit refinement realm. Killing him is also helpful in weakening the strength of the Yinma lineage. Anyway, no matter how you look at it, there is no harm to the Great Light Temple, is there?" Hearing this, Su Yan's expression became even stranger. A member of the Hidden Devil faction was standing in front of him and discussing with him how to weaken the Hidden Devil faction. Was there anything more bizarre than this? Chu Xiu continued, "Actually, Master Su Yan, you should be happy. It's best if the entire Hidden Devil faction is filled with people like me who are selfish and don't care about the interests of the entire sect. That way, even without the suppression of the orthodox sects, the Hidden Devil faction will probably die from internal strife." Su Yan took a deep breath and said, "Regardless of whether what you say is true or not, there is no harm to the Great Light Temple if we can kill Yuan Tianfang. But now, the Great Light Temple can't do anything. The righteous and demonic battle has just ended, and the Great Light Temple doesn't want to do anything on a large scale because of the conflict in the martial world. If we kill Yuan Tianfang, the Great Light Temple will definitely attract the revenge of the entire Hidden Devil faction. Although the Great Light Temple isn't afraid, if we fight, it will still be a situation where both sides suffer. This is also what the Great Light Temple doesn't want to see." As he said this, Su Yan glanced at Chu Xiu and said, "Otherwise, why do you think the Temple of Great Light rarely interferes when you've caused such a ruckus in the northern Yan? Firstly, you have an agreement with Shidu. Secondly, the Great Light Temple really does not want to stir up trouble at this time. Secondly, even if the Great Light Temple wants to make a move, we are powerless now. Senior Brother Abbot is in closed-door training. Senior Brother Su Yun and Senior Brother Su Jing are also in closed-door training. Without a true fire spirit refinement realm powerhouse to take action, I don't want the other disciples of the Great Light Temple to die in vain." Chu Xiu stretched out his hand and said, "These 2 points are very simple. Master Su Yan, don't forget that in the Hidden Devil lineage, my position is no worse than Yuan Tianfang's. Don't worry, as long as Yuan Tianfang is killed, I will naturally deal with the Hidden Devil lineage. I will not let the Great Light Temple and the Hidden Devil lineage start a fierce battle." Su Yan frowned and said, "But what if you deliberately fail to do it?" Chu Xiu said alone, "Master Su Yan, please don't worry about this. I, Chu Xiu, still have this bit of credibility. Moreover, I don't want the current Hidden Devil lineage to go against the Great Light Temple. In that case, I don't think there will be much left of the family business that I have set up in the northern Yan. As for the last point, it is even simpler. This time, even if Master Su Yun is not in closed-door training, I can't afford to invite him. The Great Light Temple only needs to send one person." "Who?" Chu Xiu said in a deep voice, "The head of Kongji Zen Hall, Master Su Du." Among the monks of the Great Light Temple, Chu Xiu had fought with Su Xing of the Dharma Hall. The strength of the other party could only be regarded as above average among the martial artists of the same rank. It was not weak, but it was definitely not the strong kind. But Su Du was different. Anyway, Chu Xiu couldn't see the depth of his strength. He was the kind that had reached the peak of the real pellet state. He was definitely qualified to challenge the real fire spirit refinement state. Su Yan was still a little hesitant. He acted calmly and never liked to do things that were too risky. In his opinion, this matter with Chu Xiu was a bit risky. Anyway, a person from the Hidden Devil lineage came to the Great Light Temple to ask him to join forces to kill a martial artist from the Hidden Devil lineage. No matter how he thought about it, it was awkward. However, at this moment, a voice suddenly sounded, "I agree to this matter. I've long been displeased with that old thing, Yuan Tianfang. Some time ago, his disciples actually forced the Shizang Lu family who sold spiritual wine to move away. This is outrageous. I have never seen a martial arts family that is more honest than the Lu family. Within a family, they only rely on selling spiritual wine to survive. He even bullies such a family. Bastard." Su Du rolled up the sleeves of his monk robe with a wine gourd hanging on his waist. He walked in aggressively with a look of righteous indignation. Su Yan slapped his head helplessly and said, "Senior brother Su Du, how did you know about this? You even know that a small family like the Lu family is in trouble. Since when did you care so much about the martial arts world's news?" Su Du waved his hand casually and said, "Don't worry about how I know. We Buddhists are merciful. If something happens, we should take care of it. Chu Xiu, you are responsible for luring that old guy out. I will kill him along the way. Let's join forces and kill this old guy." At this time, Su Du looked like a bandit. He looked like he had a feud with Yuan Tianfang who killed his father. It was unknown whether it was because he hated evil or because Yuan Tianfang's disciples caused him to have no wine to drink. Seeing that Su Du had already agreed, Su Yan was helpless at this time. In front of Chu Xiu, how could he embarrass Su Du? Moreover, apart from the abbot of the Great Light Temple, the three great meditation halls' first seats were in charge. If Su Du was not unreliable, with his strength, Su Du would have been in charge of the Great Light Temple when the abbot, Su Xi, Su Yun, and Su Jing were all in seclusion. Chu Xiu said with a smile, "When we have a concrete plan to take action, I will get someone to inform Master Su Du." With that, Chu Xiu bade farewell and left. After Chu Xiu left, Su Yan grumbled, "Senior brother Su Du, why did you agree so quickly?" Chu Xiu rushed to join forces with the Great Light Temple. There must be some hidden reasons. Moreover, the other party is a true fire spirit refinement realm powerhouse from the Hidden Devil clan. No matter what, you have to think it through. You agreed so quickly. Isn't that too hasty? Su Du shook his head and said, "Oh you worry too much. Let me ask you, if the lineage of hidden demons loses a true fire spirit refinement realm cultivator, will it benefit the Temple of Great Light, or even the orthodox martial arts world?" Su Yan said, "Of course. Even if we lose an ordinary demonic martial artist, it will still be beneficial to the orthodox martial arts world, much less a true fire spirit refinement realm powerhouse. When the demon disappears, the righteous will rise. The demon cannot suppress the righteous. This has been the case since ancient times." Su Du spread his hands and said, "That's it. What's the use of thinking so much? Junior brother Su Yan, it's not that I want to criticize you, but sometimes you really should be more decisive. Yuan Tianfang, that old thing, has stirred up the entire northern Yan. Although Chu Xiu isn't a good person, at least he knows the rules. Otherwise, you wouldn't have agreed to a 3-month deadline with him, right? Moreover, that old thing, Yuan Tianfang, was simply bad and stupid. His group of idiotic disciples had tormented the Wulin of Northern Yan Kingdom. The Great Light Temple is one of the leaders of the orthodox martial arts world, the #1 sect in Northern Yan. Are we really going to let Yuan Tianfang's disciples do as they please? How will the other forces look at the Great Light Temple? If we settle this a day later, it will be a heavy blow to the reputation of the Great Light Temple. Su Yan looked at Su Du in surprise. He could actually see the relationship of interests so clearly. Now, Su Yan could not tell if Su Du wanted to kill Yuan Tianfang for the benefit of the Great Light Temple or if he wanted to kill Yuan Tianfang purely because he could not drink any wine. At this time, after Chu Xiu returned to the Jianghu Hall, he was thinking of a way to lure Yuan Tianfang out of the Jianghu Hall. The other party always stayed in Yanjing City. One reason was that Chu Xiu did not want to make a move here as it would cause too much of a commotion. Another reason was that Chu Xiu was afraid that the Northern Yan court would interfere at will. As for Xiang Long, Chu Xiu did not have much hope. The cooperation between him and Xiang Long was now only in name. Both sides were close to completely falling out. Luring Yuan Tianfang out was actually very simple. Chu Xiu asked for Shui Wuxiang's help, as well as the cooperation of a small clan. He engraved an ancient array formation in that clan's territory, then deceived Yuan Tianfang's disciples and grand disciples, saying that this was a supreme treasure passed down from ancient times, but no one was able to open it. Of course, the ancient formation that Shui Wuxiang was proficient in was not something that these people could open at will. Even when they asked Duan Zhouao for help, even Duan Zhouao could not open it. They could only let Yuan Tianfang go alone. After leaving Yanjing City, Yuan Tianfang only had a feeling of unease, but he could not find the source of this feeling. The perception of warriors was extremely sharp, especially those like Yuan Tianfang. In the past, when Yuan Tianfang was in his prime, he killed wantonly in Jianghu. That was not a joke, so Yuan Tianfang's perception was the most acute at that time. But now, as he grew older, although Yuan Tianfang's qi and blood did not decline, it was no longer growing. As for his perception, it had actually begun to degenerate. Therefore, Yuan Tianfang had always thought that there was something dangerous hidden in the ancient formation. He was still thinking about how he should break the formation. At this moment, Yuan Tianfang's footsteps suddenly stopped. At the end of the road, there was a slovenly monk with a wine gourd on his waist looking at him angrily, as if he had a grudge against Yuan Tianfang for killing his father. Looking at the monk, Yuan Tianfang knew that the other party should be a monk from the Great Light Temple, and his strength was definitely not weak. He could even faintly feel the terrifying power in the other party's body. Yuan Tianfang thought that the other party was here because he had killed Zongping, so he said, "This is the Great Light Temples." However, Su Du did not give him a chance to speak at all. He immediately shouted angrily and rushed forward, "Old demon Yuan, die." Chapter 803. Su Du's strength had always been a mystery. Even some people in the Great Light Temple did not understand how strong this somewhat unruly Kongji Zen Hall chief was. In the past, Chu Wuji had fought with Su Du, and even Chu Wuji could not figure out Su Du's strength. However, the only thing that was certain was that Su Du had definitely reached the peak of the real pellet state, and his combat power was amazing. He was definitely the kind of existence that could compete with the true fire spirit refinement state. At this time, Su Du's body was shining with Buddha's light, and a glaring Vajra appeared behind him. As he punched, the glaring Vajra roared at the sky, and the surrounding Buddha's light turned into angry flames that smashed down. Yuan Tianfang snorted coldly. He took a step forward, and the boundless demonic qi around him had already soared into the sky, stirring up the wind and clouds. In an instant, the sky was covered with dark clouds. Even people more than 10 miles away could perceive this powerful force. When the true fire spirit refinement state attacked, the power couldn't be concealed even if they wanted to. Some of the nearby martial artists were shivering. They were curious and wanted to check it out, but they didn't have the guts. It also required strength to watch the show. If they wanted to watch the show with their little strength, they would die. At this time, in the field, the 8 giant demonic qi hands in the air were positioned in 8 directions, and they smashed towards Su Du at the same time. With a loud bang, the Buddha's light was extinguished, and the glaring Vajra was directly smashed. Yuan Tianfang put his hands together to form a seal, and the 8 giant demonic qi hands condensed in 8 directions, instantly turning into a huge cage, trapping Su Du in it. Yuan Tianfang also saw that although the monk's strength was amazing, he was only a martial Dao master. He had not reached the true fire spirit refinement state yet, so Yuan Tianfang could subdue him. After all, not everyone in the underworld was like Qinqing Di, who had the strength to blow away the true fire spirit refinement state with one punch at the real pellet state. Yuan Tianfang didn't continue to attack. He just asked, "I don't seem to have any grudges with your Great Light Temple, right? What do you mean by attacking me?" Su Du sneered, "Old man, you killed my Great Light Temple's disciple, and you say there's no grudge? Of course, the most despicable thing is that you caused me to have no wine to drink." Yuan Tianfang frowned. "What does it have to do with me if you don't have any wine to drink?" However, before Yuan Tianfang could continue to say anything, another Guanyin Dharma form emerged from the Buddhist light around Shudu. It had 1,000 hands and 1,000 eyes. Endless Buddhist light bloomed and melted. In an instant, Yuan Tianfang's devil chi giant hand was completely eroded and melted. As Shudu pinched the Buddhist seal with his hand, the Dharma form behind him quickly transformed into the immovable Wisdom King Dharma form with 4 faces and 8 arms. As Shudu attacked, it smashed toward Yuan Tianfang. Yuan Tianfang frowned. Who was this monk? This martial Dao was a little too exaggerated. Ordinary martial artists of the Great Light Temple mainly cultivated one path. For example, Zongxian mainly cultivated the Vajra seal, while the monks of the Vajra yard naturally cultivated the furious Vajra Heart Sutra, cultivating the power of Vajra. Su Du, on the other hand, had a myriad of changes in his martial path. He cultivated the power of Vajra and the Bodhisattva view. Now, he even had the Wisdom King seal. He worshipped the Buddha, but Shudu had fused the different attributes of Buddhist power into one. Was this guy sincere and thought that all Buddhas were equal, or did he not take these Buddhas seriously at all? Yuan Tianfang had not been to the Central Plains for a long time. In addition, Shudu usually kept a low profile, so Yuan Tianfang did not recognize Shudu. However, he was sure that someone with such strength was at least a first seat of the Great Light Temple. So when he attacked, Yuan Tianfang snorted coldly as he attacked. "What is the Great Light Temple trying to do? Don't think that I really don't dare to kill." He did not think that the other party had come to kill him just because of a disciple. If the Great Light Temple was so reckless, they probably would not have survived until now. Shudu did not answer and continued to attack wildly. Seeing this, Yuan Tianfang snorted coldly and said, "Good, good, good. Since you want to fight, then don't blame I for not showing mercy to the Great Light Temple." For so many years, it had always been him, Yuan Tianfang, who chased and attacked others like a madman. When had there ever been a time when others chased and attacked him? As soon as he finished speaking, the demonic qi around Yuan Tianfang flourished, and the demonic qi whirlpool in midair stirred. As Yuan Tianfang formed a fist seal, he smashed it down. Every time he smashed it, one of Shudu's dharma would be smashed to pieces, causing him to grimace in pain. In the past, Yuan Tianfang was able to kill the true fire spirit refinement realm powerhouses of the Chunyang Dao sect and the true martial cult. In terms of strength, Yuan Tianfang was definitely not weak. Moreover, what others did not know was that Yuan Tianfang had not given his true inheritance to anyone, including Xing Situ. Yuan Tianfang's 10 directions infinite heaven-shaking demonic technique was a demonic technique that he had created himself. It was a fusion of countless ancient demonic techniques that Yuan Tianfang had collected over the years, as well as some demonic techniques and secret techniques of the Kunlun devil cult. Its power was indeed very strong. Of course, he had named it himself. From Yuan Tianfang's point of view, the longer the name, the stronger the technique. His demonic technique was worthy of its name. The demonic might was vast and majestic. Even Shudu could not do anything about this kind of crushing power. After all, he was not at the true fire spirit refinement realm yet. At that moment, Yuan Tianfang suddenly felt an extreme sense of danger. His heart began to beat wildly, and a chill rushed to his heart. In that instant, Yuan Tianfang immediately changed his target and retreated. The demonic qi whirlpool condensed 10 giant arms. This was Yuan Tianfang's full attack. As Yuan Tianfang's hands formed a seal, the 10 giant demonic hands also formed a seal at the same time. 10 Directions Demon Seal. While Yuan Tianfang was forming a seal, a pitch-black arrow had already shot out. Everywhere it passed, the qi of heaven and earth was destroyed. The pitch-black arrow blasted onto the 10 Directions Demon Seal. The demonic qi was black, but the black on the arrow could be said to be the ultimate black. It was the power of destruction, the power of nirvanic extermination. In an instant, the 10 directional Sky Fiend's seal began to crumble, and the 10 giant demonic hands also began to crumble. The demonic qi around Yuan Tianfang surged, and a huge vortex of demonic qi rushed over, wrapping the power of the arrow within it. But in the next moment, it shattered with a loud bang. But fortunately, the moment the demonic qi whirlpool shattered, the power of the arrow finally dissipated. Chu Xiu. Yuan Tianfang spat out these 2 words through gritted teeth. His face was full of killing intent as he looked at Chu Xiu behind him. Triple City Annihilation Arrow. In the past, Dugu Weiwei destroyed the Iron Emperor Castle. Although few people in the outside world knew about it, it could not be hidden from the people inside the Yinma clan. They had long known that Chu Xiu had obtained a part of Dugu Weiwei's inheritance in the secret realm left behind by the Yinma clan. Yuan Tianfang never thought that Chu Xiu would dare to kill him. Where did he get such courage from? He was one of the big shots of the Yinma clan, one of the leaders of the entire Yinma clan. No matter how glorious Chu Xiu was, he was still a junior. Had he ever thought of the consequences of offending his superiors? At the same time, Yuan Tianfang's heart was palpitating. In the past, Patriarch Dugu's martial arts were so powerful that it made people tremble. Back then, Fang Jinwu died under Chu Xiu's Triple City Annihilation Arrow. Although his strength was much stronger than Fang Jinwu, he had to use all his strength to block the arrow. Moreover, under the sneak attack, if he had been a little slower, he would have been seriously injured even if he had not died. Just as Yuan Tianfang was about to say something, Su Du, who was behind him, had already made his move. Behind Su Du, the guardian deity, bodhisattvas, and Buddhas, and countless shadows flashed behind him. Thousands of Buddhas and 10,000 Dharma, only one thought in the heart is eternal. Suddenly, countless Buddha shadows condensed in it. The Buddha's light shone and completely enveloped Yuan Tianfang. At this time, Chu Xiu also moved. Although using the Triple City Annihilation Arrow just now consumed a lot of energy, the current Chu Xiu was not the Chu Xiu who had killed Fang Jinwu. One arrow could hollow him out. The heavenly demon dance slashed down with an angry roar of devil qi and an evil devouring power. There was even a faint image of a hungry ghost that was attached to it, roaring constantly. You are courting death. Yuan Tianfang's eyes were bloodshot. He never thought that Chu Xiu would be so bold as to join forces with the monks of the Great Light Temple to kill him. What was he trying to do? Was he going to cut himself off from the hidden devil lineage? At this time, neither Su Du nor Chu Xiu responded to Yuan Tianfang. They were here to kill, so what was the point of saying so much useless stuff? Even Su Du, who had always been flirtatious, only attacked at this time and did not say a word. The devil qi that soared into the sky was like a volcanic eruption. The power accumulated by Yuan Tianfang after so many years of cultivating several kinds of devil skills was simply amazing. The devil power soared into the sky and instantly broke through the shackles of the Buddha's light. At the same time, Yuan Tianfang stretched out his hand, and the giant hand of devil qi that he had transformed directly grabbed the blade of Chu Xiu. However, in an instant, the power of the hungry ghost broke out, and the giant hand of devil qi was directly swallowed in half. However, at this time, 8 giant hands of devil qi fell at the same time, either with fists, palms, or finger techniques. Each giant hand of devil qi contained a kind of martial arts transformation. For a demonic rogue cultivator like Yuan Tianfang who had risen from humble beginnings, although their inheritance of martial arts might not be stronger than that of Chu Xiu, the number of martial arts he mastered was not inferior to that of Chu Xiu. At the moment when the giant hands of Devil Qi fell, a blood shadow flashed around Chu Xiu. The great blood shadow technique was displayed, and the blood shadows all over the sky met the 8 giant hands. Blood-colored sword Qi soared into the sky, blood-colored Buddha's light filled the air, and even blood-colored thunderbolts crashed down. The martial arts of these experts from 500 years ago were displayed to the extreme at this moment, and the 8 giant hands of Devil Qi were directly smashed to pieces. Behind Yuan Tianfang, Su Du changed his previous cheeky appearance. His dharma was solemn, and in the Buddha's light, countless Buddha shadows merged into his body. As his palm fell, 10,000 Buddhas became one. The powerful Devil Qi around Yuan Tianfang was directly penetrated, and he was blasted by the palm. His face instantly turned extremely pale. At this time, the surrounding boundless blood shadows also merged into one, attached to Chu Xiu's heavenly demon dance. The blood-colored blade slashed down, directly leaving a huge wound on Yuan Tianfang's chest, and blood suddenly gushed out. You're tuning into the Carefree Valley YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.